What? No, I haven't.
Oops.
Hello?
May I speak to Karen, please?
That was it.
That wasn't Karen.
I don't think so.
That sounded like her to me.
No,
It did, it didn't.
Probably get her headset there or something.
no, I think that's it.
That sounded like Karen.
She's at a reunion.
Hello?
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Can you hear us?
You're on speaker.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I have one piece of advice. Don't breathe heavily into the mouthpiece.
Tell her
I
also
will
to put it
try
on
not.
Okay. Oh,
Can folks in the audience hear her? Karen,
Karen-
say the alphabet.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
okay. Yeah, try to speak, speak loudly, Karen, so we can hear you, but thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, where's my,
10:30 here.
I know. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the June 28th meeting of the Berkeley School Board. If you're wondering why I have this ridiculous thing on my arm, it's because I just had surgery yesterday and it's keeping my arm up.
That's what he wants you to think. It's because he voted against me at the last board meeting.
Yeah, that's right. Lost a bet. Okay. If you'd like to follow along on our online agenda, you can do so on your phone, or you can borrow a computer from Ms. Chires. I want to remind everyone that our board meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and over the radio on 89.3 FM and on TV Comcast Channel 33. I'll now call the open session of tonight's meeting to order at 7:30. For the record, closed session began at 6 o'clock p.m. Ms. Chires, can you please share with community members present our process for translation of the meeting?
Buenas noches, tardes, noches. Y bienvenidos. Si hay alguien que necesita traducción de inglés al español porque desea dirigirse a la mesa directiva, a favor de hacérmelo saber, ya que le agregaremos más tiempo a su comentario. Director Beatriz Leiva Cutler.
Presente.
Director Karen Hempel.
Present.
Director Judy Appel.
Here.
Vice President Josh Daniels.
Here.
President Ty Alper.
Present. Okay. We will now approve the agenda, and we have a few changes to make to the agenda. We're going to move up the item about Thousand Oaks because I think most of the people here are here for that item, so we're going to move it from, say it again?
12.5 to
Yeah.
12.1?
We're going to move it up to 12.3. We're going to do the first two.
Okay.
We're going to do the first 12.2, 12.1, 12.2, and then we're going to do Thousand Oaks before we do LCAP. Item number 11.10 on the consent calendar, which is our approval of contracts and purchase orders, we're going to pull for action. So that will be, I think I can do it, 12.8. It's not right hand. We just read 12.8, sorry. And then we're pulling item 11.16 altogether, which is the approval of a contract for architectural and design services for a playground at King CDC.
This is pulled as well.
And we're pulling 14.4 on information, which was a policy related to our construction bond oversight committee. We're pulling that one altogether too. Are there any other changes that anyone wants to request? Okay, thank you.
So just to recap, on the consent, 11.10 is moved to action.
It'll be the last action.
11.16 is pulled. 14.4 is pulled. And 12.5 is moved between 12.2 and 12.3.
You said
Right.
also 11.8, didn't you?
11.10.
Oh, 11.10.
I'll make a motion to move the agenda as
Did you
amended.
say 14.4?
And 14.4 is pulled altogether. Okay, motion by Vice President Daniels. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Director Appel. All in favor? Oh, we have to do every vote.
Everything has to be a roll call vote.
Yeah, that's right. Roll call vote on this. Thank you, Director Hempel.
Director Leiva Cutler.
Yes.
Director Hempel.
Yes.
Director Appel.
Aye.
Vice President Daniels.
Yep.
President Alper.
Yes. Okay. We have an agenda now. I will report from closed session. Item 3.1.1, case number 1617-SUS3-060900. There was a motion by Director Appel to accept the staff recommendation to expunge student record, a second by Director Leiva Cutler. I voted in favor. The vote was 3-0. Vice President Daniels and Director Hempel were absent. Case number Item number 3.1.2, case number 1617-09-121302. There was a motion by myself to accept the staff recommendation to expunge the student record. Second by Director Leyva-Cutler. Director Appel voted in favor, and the vote was 3-0 with Vice President Daniels and Director Hemphill absent. Item 3.1.3, case number 1617-10-121302. There was a motion by myself to accept the staff recommendation to expunge the student record with a second by Director Leyva-Cutler. Director Appel voted in favor. The vote was 3-0 with Vice President Daniels and Director Hemphill absent. Item 3.2.1, Public Employee Discipline Dismissal Release, ID number 5000. There was a motion by myself to accept the staff recommendation, second by Director Appel. Director Leyva-Cutler voted in favor. The vote was 3-0. Vice President Daniels and Director Hemphill were absent. We have an appointment to announce, item 3.3.1, the district's professional development coordinator. There's a motion by Director Appel to appoint Susanna Reed to this position, with a second by Director Leyva-Cutler. Vice President Daniels and myself voted in favor. Director Hemphill was absent. I'd like to ask Assistant Superintendent Scuderi to say a few words about this appointment.
Yeah, we're very pleased to have Ms. Suzanne Reed joining the Educational Services Department as the Coordinator for Professional Development district-wide. Ms. Reed served for 6 years as a teacher at Jefferson Elementary, and in the past school year served as the Vice Principal for Malcolm X. From the education program perspective, there are a few things that we value more than building skills and competencies with and for our teachers, and we are extremely pleased to have Ms. Reed joining our Educational Services team tonight.
Thank you, and congratulations to Ms. Reed. Item 3.4, there was a motion by Vice President Daniels to authorize the superintendent to appoint certificated administrators during the summer, with a second by myself. Director Leyva-Cutler and Director Appel voted in favor, so the vote was 4-0. Director Hemphill was absent. Item 3.5, collective bargaining with Local 21. The board heard an update and gave direction. Item 3.6, collective bargaining with our administrators union. The board heard an update and gave direction. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Now I'm going to provide a brief overview of tonight's meeting. First, we're going to hear 30 minutes of public comment. Then we'll hear comment from our unions and district committees. We'll then have comments from board members and the superintendent. Then we'll consider our consent calendar, which are items that the board may vote on all in one motion. Then we will hear a number of action items. First, the public disclosure of collective bargaining agreements, then a vote on the approval of a tentative agreement with our teachers union, then a vote on the approval of the superintendent's recommendation regarding Thousand Oaks bilingual program, then a vote on the approval of our local control and accountability plan, then a vote on approval of our adopted budget for next fiscal year, then a vote on approval of a suicide prevention policy, then a vote on approval of revisions to our sexual harassment policies, and finally a vote on approval of contracts for services. After all that, we'll have a brief discussion on first reading regarding a board policy regarding interviews by students by district lawyers. That's our one discussion item. At the end of the meeting, there will be another opportunity for public comment. So if you do not get to speak at the beginning of the meeting, you can stay and speak at the end of the meeting. The next item on the agenda is 30 minutes for public comment. The Vice President and I have organized the speaking request by agenda item. We will rotate through the agenda items so that we can do our best to hear from at least one person on each agenda item. It's unlikely that we're going to get to everybody who filled in a card tonight to speak. If your name is called, you can cede your time to another speaker. To do so, stand up if your name is called, state your name, and indicate to whom you would like to cede your time. By ceding your time, you give up your opportunity to speak, and nobody can later cede their time to you to speak. Please note that you can only cede your time to a speaker who's speaking about the same topic that you wrote down on your card. Tonight, we're going to limit speakers to 2 minutes in order to accommodate the number of people here, and in order to hear the maximum number of speakers that we can in 30 minutes. We limit the time so that we can hear from as many people as possible in 30 minutes. In my discretion, we can allow extra time for those who need translation, which Ms. Chires can provide. When there's 1 minute left in your speech, the light at the lectern will turn yellow, and when your time is up, the light will turn red, and you'll hear a beep. If you're still speaking when the time is up, please finish your sentence, but then please don't speak beyond your time. If everybody sticks to their time, we can get more people to speak, but we will hear as many as we can in only 30 minutes. To keep things moving, I'm going to ask the person who's up next to stand over by the Year of the Reader sign so that you're ready to go when it's your turn. During the public comment, the board does not respond directly to comments or questions made. We and staff do take notes during public comment and may follow up with the speaker after the meeting. Following the public comment period, there's a period on the agenda during which board members and the superintendent have a few minutes each to make a comment about whatever they want. That is the time in which board members can choose to, if they wish, respond to something said in public comment or make any other comment that they wish. We found that this process keeps our meetings running smoothly, allows for the maximum number of people to speak in 30 minutes, and it ensures compliance with the Brown Act, which does not allow for board discussions about items that are not placed on the agenda at least 72 hours in advance of the meeting. I want to remind all the speakers that we have children in the audience today. They're also maybe listening or watching at home, so please keep that in mind as you speak. And if you have complaints about specific district employees, we encourage you to take advantage of our formal complaint process rather than using public comment for that purpose. Okay. We'll now begin. Aist Solly. Oh, and I apologize in advance if I have trouble reading your writing or pronouncing your name. Aist Solly, followed by Rob Collier.
Hello, I'm a parent of a student in a bilingual program in Thousand Oaks. Sorry, I never attended one of these meetings, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity that my daughter had in this program and continues to have. And next year, she's going to be in a combo class for second. I'm really saddened by the news that the program is being phased out or is recommended to be closed down. And I think that the proposal that's on the table right now to replace the bilingual, biliterate education program with the heritage program is not only not an adequate replacement, but it doesn't serve the purposes and the needs of our community. So currently students get 6 hours of Spanish instruction, and the proposal is to close down the program, phase the students, and then replace it with heritage program, which would have three hours of weekly instruction to all Thousand Oaks students. It sounds good to the overall school community, but it doesn't address the needs of the bilingual students who are acquiring English and need the bilingual education to actually learn and grasp the concepts before they're comfortable. I know that there have been letters from the superintendent quoting the numbers and the current struggles with the enrollment process and filling the classrooms. And in my opinion, as a parent, I feel that all of those challenges that our enrollment in the bilingual program are due to the admissions process. Number one, the website.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Mr. Collier, followed by Dan Plonzi.
Hi, I'm Rob Collier. I'm a LeConte parent, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the LeConte PTA about the LeConte name change petition, which is item 14.1, an information item. And we're here to support the petition, which is our petition, and to support the superintendent's review of our name. Briefly, the reasons why we're asking for the name to be changed was in the past couple years, information has become available about just who Joseph LeConte really was. And he was an unrepentant racist. He had played a key role in the Confederate Army munitions industry, and then when he moved to California, he stayed racist. He wrote a book in 1892, The Race Problem in the South, saying that African Americans were not, didn't deserve full citizenship rights. He was a frequent public speaker, claiming that African Americans were inferior. And so by no means was he the same sort of accidental racist like Jefferson and Washington, many of the founding fathers of our country. He was actively, consciously, deliberately racist, and so for the obvious reasons doesn't deserve to be recognized by our community. Now, we could have gotten a lot more signatures, but we only had a few weeks. But we hope for a very inclusive, positive process to both debate discuss the name change and to choose a new name. And we hope it can be very inclusive and positive. And we hope that we will be given time, and our teachers will be given time, to make it really an educational moment with lots of teachable opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Plonzi, followed by Emma Munoz.
Hi, I'm Dan Plonzi. I'm a parent and a teacher, math teacher at Berkeley High. I'm here to talk to you about the contract with BFT and to ask you not to approve it this evening. Among the values that are very important to me as both a parent and a teacher, they're democracy, reducing the growing inequality in this country and in this city, and developing a passion for learning in my students. There are three reasons why I want you not to approve the contract tonight. The first has to do with democracy. The contract, according to the BFT bylaws, we have 2 weeks to vote. We were only given 11 days. The contract, rather, the bylaw is very clear on this. The reason why 11 days is not as good as 14 is that we didn't have a Monday morning department meeting in which we could have talked about and mobilized against this contract. So we had limited time to research, limited time to talk to our fellows. So basically, having these 3 days less made a very large difference for us. There were many teachers who did vote against the contract. It's basically a 6% loss for us in terms of constant dollars, following a 20% loss in constant dollars in the previous 9 years. So it's not right for us to accept such a contract without protest. And I'm here to both protest this contract, to say that it's a shameful contract, and to ask you on the basis of its insufficiency and lack of democracy not to vote for it today. Thanks.
Thank you. Emma Munoz, followed by Rebecca Hooley.
Buenas noches.
Good evening.
Soy una madre que vine a inscribir a mi niña en enero.
I came to enroll my daughter in January.
Y la puse en bilingüe.
We chose the bilingual program for her.
Lo que le pregunté a la que me ayudó a llenar los papeles, que si habían puesto a mi niña.
When I came back to make sure that they had enrolled my daughter
en bilingüe.
In the bilingual program.
Y me dijo que era programar solo en inglés.
I was told that she wasn't enrolled and that she was in an all-English class.
Y pues vine yo aquí al distrito y de casualidad me encontré al señor Francisco.
And when I came back, I spoke to Francisco.
Y le pregunté que por qué no me habían puesto a mi niña en bilingüe y me dijo de que solo a 10 niños seleccionaban.
I asked why my daughter wasn't placed in the bilingual program. He explained that only 10 kids were selected for the program.
Entonces me dijo de que la apuntara en una lista de espera.
He suggested that I waitlisted my child.
Entonces yo como madre quiero que mi niña tenga el español.
I want my child to keep her Spanish.
Porque sé que en un futuro a ella le va a ayudar.
Because it will be a benefit to her in the future.
No quiero que quiten el programa porque tanto como a ellos y a nosotros nos va a ayudar.
I don't want you to remove this program. This program will benefit our children greatly.
Para que ellos no pierdan su cultura.
So that they can retain their culture.
Y pues nosotros aquí como familia estamos como en protesta para que ustedes nos apoyen.
We are showing up tonight in hopes that you can support us.
Para que nuestros niños salgan adelante.
So our children can really succeed.
Junto con ustedes y nosotros como padres.
And so that we all can succeed as a community.
Y se los agradecería mucho que no quiten el programa bilingüe.
I would really appreciate it if you did not remove this program. ¿Esto?
Muchas gracias.
Rebecca Hooley, followed by Sagrario Zepeda.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Rebecca Hooley. I am a parent of a LeConte student. I'm here to support the petition for the LeConte name change. Joseph LeConte was not just merely a man of his times. He actively promoted racism. And as previously explained, he lectured and wrote papers on the subject after the Civil War was over. I think that it's important that we show our children that we do not support such people as our role models, and that we have many better role models who have more important things to teach us and who do not have the same moral failings as Mr. LeConte. I also think it's a wonderful opportunity to teach our children about civic engagement, and I know that the teachers at LeConte are prepared to help lead the children through this process. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zepeda? Yes. Followed by Lori Berenson.
Hi, good evening. Well, I come to support Thousand Oaks, and since probably a month and a half, I've been coming to the board meetings. I think you hear a lot from us lately. What I've seen every time I come to the board is any student, even for middle school to junior high, to speaking in both languages. Spanish is really important in the future of our kids. I have my daughter, she's gonna be a 5th grade on Thousand Oaks, and I have my son that he's gonna be a 1st grade. So how the kids are gonna be affected on these combo classes that you are thinking on having for the following year? How the next generation of Spanish-speaking families living in Berkeley are going to be affected? I know that you're talking about a lot about statistics, data, demographics that obviously, living in Berkeley is very expensive. Families are coming from San Francisco, from all of the Bay Area to live in Berkeley. We live in Berkeley because we have rent control. Our families have years of living in Berkeley. Generations have passed through Berkeley High. Every time I go to the graduations at Berkeley High, how many Latino people have you seen graduated from high school? A lot, right? I think being bilingual is really important. I know that you have all these, I call it segregated program in LeConte. For myself, it's different because it's not the same program that as we have in this community in Thousand Oaks. On LeConte, we have white people they work together as a community, you know? People get benefit from the English to the Spanish, but in Thousand Oaks, we have a heritage, and the history of Thousand Oaks is different. For example, my daughter, she's gonna be in 5th grade. Right now, I could say she's fluently bilingual. She just get reclassified this year. My son, I want the same for my son. I get here to the United States when I was around 23 years. I didn't know any English at all. Can I have just a little bit of more time?
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Lori Berenson, followed by Hollis Williams.
Hi, I just want to speak very briefly to, I haven't never been to one of these meetings, but I have spoken to members of the board before, and I've spoken to those who went to Thousand Oaks recently. I just want to appeal to your willingness to listen to our voices. We really appreciate the fact that you're looking into another alternative to the Heritage Program. It's great to be thinking of something that will benefit the whole school, but I think we really need to be thinking about the needy population that uses the services of bilingual education. I have a bilingual son who came to the United States when he was 6.5, speaking very little English, and this program has been wonderful with him. I mean, we have an amazing collection of teachers and staff that are so loving and so kind and so willing to move forward. And I really think that given the opportunity to make this work, they would make it work. And I think there are a bunch of administrative issues that we have addressed before that one of the other parents also mentioned about not having some issues in the admissions office in which people are not aware of the existence of the program, or the issue with testing, which can sometimes be hard. And I really think that if we fix those issues, there is a possibility that we could really benefit a community that is needing assistance more today. So I think we have to be thinking of the larger community and the benefits it will have on the children and their future and the future of their families and the relationship they will have with their families who live abroad. And I think it is such a valuable program. I just would like to appeal to you all to think through the fact that this is not a program you should lose. It is so wonderful. I just would like to say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, followed by Gabriel Rojas.
Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Hollis Williams. I have a child in the bilingual program. His name is Mateo. He's going to 1st grade. I also have a 2-year-old who I want to be in the bilingual program. And hearing the recommendation that's being put forth tonight, that may not happen for her. I'm just a kid from Oakland. Grew up speaking one language. I didn't have multi-language capabilities at home. I went to high school. I was fortunate enough to learn Spanish. I majored in Spanish in school. I lived abroad. Having the bilingual, another language to speak gives you an idea of what other cultures are like. It's very important for my son and my family that they have the opportunity to know the culture of the other, understand how people see the world in different lights and different languages and different experiences. And for me, that language we've chosen is Spanish. You've heard many parents and faculty and people talk about the need for this program. And I understand there's obstacles in making sure that you have full classrooms, and funding is important. I understand that. We had a meeting last week with Dr. Evans, and we appreciate that meeting. And we left there with a sense of hope that we can have a way to make this program be sustainable and maintained. And getting the recommendation letter saying that the program is going to be phased out was very disheartening. I'm putting myself forward here to help with the process to find more people for these classrooms. If the question is about enrollment, we can help with that process. There are many barriers and challenges that happen with families to try to get the program given misinformation or being told the program is being phased out, to having information on the website being inconsistent or not available. That's a shame. This program can be maintained. We want to make sure this program is maintained. You yourself, Dr. Evans, said last year that you allowed children who didn't pass the assessments into the program. So I'm saying if right now you have children who are on the wait list who want to be in the program, you've already set precedent saying the assessments are not a key factor. If the factor is enrollment, we want to help and be a partner in this process to help you find children who want to be in this program. We heard from someone tonight who was dissuaded saying they can't be in the program. There are many families who want and need this program, and we really want to help you and we want to be partners in the process to maintain this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Gabriel Rojas, followed by Erica Guerrero.
My name is Gabriel Rojas. Thanks. I'm here to also propose that you rethink this proposal about shutting down Thousand Oaks. I have 2 kids attending the bilingual program, and I have a 3rd child entering in fall. And we arrived in February this year, and I was by coincidence, I must say, we were able to enter, or my kids were able to enter this bilingual program. And we were very, very grateful because those that eased the integration of my kids tremendously, because they did not have any English knowledge at all. So being able to understand Spanish in the bilingual program was great. And I want you to rethink this, because the argument that is in the proposal is based on the declining numbers in the enrollment process. And I'm saying that those numbers are worthless they're worthless in a sense that they don't reflect the need and the demand of this community for this program. They don't reflect that at all. What seems to me, they reflect only the process, the bad enrollment process that's going on. Myself or ourselves, we experienced that also, and only by coincidence we crossed on this Thousand Oaks, but we were told by email, in person, many times, there's no chance your kids are going to be able to enter a bilingual program. By coincidence, we met somebody, and that told us in Thousand Oaks there should be spaces, so cross it on, and maybe you'll have a chance. And we did, and our kids passed this exam with no problem. And I'm very, very grateful for that, and so please keep that in mind when deciding on this issue. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Guerrero, followed by Stephen Murphy.
Buenas noches.
Good evening.
Soy Erika.
My name is Erica.
Mamá de una niña de primer grado de Thousand Oaks.
I'm a parent to a first grade.
Agradezco la oportunidad
I thank you for the opportunity
de dirigirme a ustedes,
to address you,
así como también por la visita del superintendente la semana
and I
pasada.
also thank you for the superintendent's visit last week.
Hoy les quiero compartir
I want to share with you
mi tristeza e incertidumbre,
my sadness,
ya que la esperanza que él nos dio
to not receive some hope last week,
parece que se desvaneció.
but it looks like it's fading.
Quiero comentar mi descontento
I want to express my
y la
discontentment
indignidad de falta de consideración a nosotros y los maestros de nuestra escuela ante esta situación.
and what I find to be a lack of consideration for us in our community.
Con todo respeto,
With all due respect,
les pido
I request
que así como la comunidad votó por ustedes
that just like we as a community voted
para
for
que
you
tengan el cargo que hoy poseen,
to be trusted with the charge that you have,
es porque nosotros confiamos en su capacidad de trabajo.
that was because we trusted in your capacity and in your ability to support us.
No defrauden la confianza que les tenemos
Please don't let us down.
y en vez de querer cerrar un necesario programa bilingüe,
And instead of closing a very necessary bilingual program,
opten por buscar soluciones justas
please opt to find just solutions
para los niños y los maestros.
for our children and our teachers.
Por favor,
Please
consideren nuestra petición
consider our request
de hacer todo lo posible
to do all that is at your reach
por mantener nuestro programa bilingüe de Thousand Oaks.
to maintain our bilingual program at Thousand Oaks.
Les reitero,
I want to repeat,
nosotros confiamos en ustedes
we trust in you.
y ayúdenos a mantener
Please help us maintain
la oportunidad de que nuestros niños
the opportunity for our children
sigan adelante
to continue moving forward
y no les nieguen la oportunidad
and
de
don't
ser
deny them
bilingües.
the opportunity to be bilingual.
Gracias. Mr. Murphy, followed by Rosemary De Perez.
Good evening, school board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have a daughter who's in the bilingual program and 2 children, hopefully, who can go to the bilingual program. You'll hear a couple of things over and over again from us, and one is our love for this program, our love for having multilingual families, the importance of that. You know that. That's really important. The second thing you'll hear over and over again is that the admissions office is the problem, and therefore those low numbers are a direct result of fixes that need to happen in the admissions office, which are really fixable, and they have to do with outreach to the program. It's not unlike a corporation really not committing enough time and energy into a program, filling it full of employees, and then just canceling the program, and all of a sudden the employees are out of work. And so it's difficult for us to stomach the idea that the admissions office could use a few fixes, like marketing the program better, having somebody who's a gatekeeper of the program who actually is encouraging the program and supports it, which will fill those seats. Because we heard over and over and over again, seats, fill those seats, fill those seats. We have a program, we can do that. So I'm asking, and we are asking, 2 things. Number 1 is put together a 30-day group to fill those seats for next year. I know that that's a tall order, but I hope somebody makes a motion to give us 30 days. Put somebody on the school board, put somebody at the school, put Principal Korn on this group, and let's get those seats filled. The second is, don't call it a heritage program yet. Give us a year to put together a task force of people to keep this program where it's at. Once you kill it, you can never bring it back. We have an opportunity here to put the right people together to save this program. Once it's done, it's done. Just give us that year. Give us 1 year, 365 days. Then kill it if we can't fill the seats. Then you can come back to us and we probably won't show up. Because you can say, look, we gave you what you wanted, and now it's not going to. But don't end this now. Give us that opportunity. We will fill those seats. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ms. De Perez, followed by Adra Kuana.
Hi, my name is Rosemary De Perez, and I'm a former parent of Thousand Oaks. My daughter just graduated from Berkeley High School as a bilingual, certified, bicultural student, ready to go off to University of Portland, who accepted her because of her biliteracy and because of her biculturalness and her ability to speak Spanish, and she will minor as a nursing student in Spanish. That is her goal. And she got that opportunity because she went to the bilingual program at Thousand Oaks. She was waitlisted. We were even, as long ago as 14 years ago, we too were getting misinformation about the availability of seats every single year, because my daughter and my son were in both the bilingual preschool and in the bilingual after-school programs at Bahia and Centro de Vida. I heard of parents who were waitlisted when there were clearly openings. I really want to support the solutions that the parents that are actively in Thousand Oaks have proposed to give this school an opportunity. You have established, highly experienced bilingual teachers of the highest regard. It is nearly impossible to find bilingual, certified, Spanish-speaking, bicultural teachers in this state and in this country. When we lost our 7th grade teacher at Longfellow that was bilingual, there was no replacement. None. And you are dismantling a program that's been around for 20, 30 years. That is not right. And that there are people who need this program far more than my own daughter did. But I'm here to tell you that this program is a success. And my daughter and my son, who's now a freshman in a native speaker Spanish class at Berkeley High School, this program is successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Audra?
I defer to Gabriela Fuentes.
Okay. Ms. Fuentes, followed by Concepcion.
Hi, and thank you for hearing us again. I'm Gabriela Fuentes, a very proud bilingual first grade teacher at Thousand Oaks, and I honor deeply all of the words that have been brought to you by our families, by our teachers, and by our community. And we've said things over and over again because we deeply need this program to stay. And we ask you tonight to hear what's been said over and over again. And therefore, I would actually like to use my time as a moment of silence, because I feel that we've come to you with our concerns and our needs, and we never have been respected enough to have those needs or concerns dealt with. We hear the same answer over and over again, and that's not enough. And it's not about the teachers, it's about the kids and the families who need this program. And so I'm gonna give my minute, and for you all to please reflect for how many times we've been here, how many things have been said by families. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker will be Concepcion.
Good night. My name is Alejandra, and I want to ask the board to consider that Thousand Oaks have a mixed community of kids and families. I know District 1, the Spanish speakers, families to fill the spaces for TWI, the new school. Let me tell you what I hear from my friends, Spanish speaker friends. They feel that you are imposing that school. You're imposing us, that school, as our own the only option we have for our kids, because our kids speak Spanish. And we don't want that. We don't want that school. We don't want that limitation. We have a second option, and it's Thousand Oaks. I want the same opportunity my kids have. I want the same opportunity for next generations of kids who speak Spanish. So please don't change the program. The program has been working good. The kids in Thousand Oaks know that there are kids who doesn't speak English, because we have special groups for bilinguals only. So they know. And they know that they learn in English. And they know Latinos are human. And they consider us. And they consider that we can learn. So we are mixed. So we don't take that environment from our school. So the program has been working so good. So don't take it.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment period, and I want to thank everyone who came out to speak. If you did not get to speak, there will be an extended public comment period at the end of the meeting. Now we have an opportunity to hear from our unions. Is there any union representative? Ms. Campbell? No. Okay. I saw Ms. Allen. No? Any district committee representatives? Okay. We'll now hear comments from the board members and the superintendent. Who wants to go first?
I had it on already. Primeramente quiero darles muchas gracias a los padres, a las familias, los niños, los maestros que están aquí con nosotros Gracias, Emma. Yo creo que ese minuto nos ayudó a todos. I think that minute helped. Thank you, everybody who came, the families, the students. It's always, this is, you know, the bilingual program, Thousand Oaks, is really close to my heart because it's all I've ever done. Run bilingual programs, worked in bilingual programs. So I know how special this is and how important it is for our children today and tomorrow. And, you know, I see the children that were once at Centro Vida graduate at Berkeley High. And I see them also, I'm proud that they get their seal of biliteracy. So I look forward to the conversation that the board will have on this important topic. I also look forward to the renaming of LeConte. And I look forward to several other schools being renamed. So thank you very much for coming.
Director Hempel, do you have any comments?
Yes. I just wanted to congratulate all of our graduates.
Karen, a little louder, please.
Okay. Yes, I wanted to just graduate everyone who graduated from. I just wanted to congratulate all of our Berkeley High graduates. It was a wonderful graduation, as always. And I also just want to say that my office hours for the summer have been closed. I had June office hours already. My next office hours will be the last Saturday in October. However, if there are people in the community that wish to speak to me over the summer, if you shoot me an email, I am sure that we can figure out a time in order to make it. Lastly, I just want to ask the board, I've been talking to the superintendent about the data that we received about our Math 1 scores, particularly for our African American students. Over more than 50% of our African American students failed Math 1 at 9th grade, and those that took it again in 10th grade did not fare much better. And this is to me a repeat of what happened when we had Algebra 1, in which those that we had many students failing in 9th, and they repeatedly failed every time they took it. I consider this a crisis. One, this is the class of 2020 we're talking about, and so I think we owe that class things that were put in place in their name but have not come to necessarily pass for them. And also I just think that the number of students that we have who are now in danger of possibly not having even math requirements for high school graduation, much less being able to complete their ACG requirements, that this is a crisis. And I would like the board to direct the superintendent to come up with a program to either do hopefully both an early back program as well as a special intervention such as a Saturday program for the school year. To continue to do what we have been doing for freshman math and those that do not pass it. It's not worked in the past, and they say that the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same things and expecting a different outcome. So I think we need a qualitative break, and this was what was also discussed at the last anti-racism task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hempel. Director Appel?
I also want to thank the many parents who came out tonight, not just tonight, but over the last couple of months. And I know we're going to be talking about this later in the agenda, but I wanted to take this opportunity to speak to you directly because I know as a parent the experience of really wanting something for your child and knowing what's best for your child and really working in community to make that happen. And so regardless of whatever we end up deciding here tonight, I just really want to, I guess, let you know that we hear you and that it's important that you came out to let us know how you're feeling because and what you believe and the passion for your students. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I also, I don't know, I just wanted to say that I feel like this has been I'm kind of been reflecting on the school year because this is our last meeting of the year, and we have made some really important decisions this year, and I feel like the board has been functioning very well. The district has been working really hard. I want to thank our teachers and our community for all of the input and all of the effort that you've been putting to make our job, to help us do our job better. So we sit up here as representatives, and I take that very seriously, my role as your representative. And so it's a gift to be in a district where there's so many people who are so deeply engaged in the process of helping to educate our kids. That being said, I want to just wish everybody a happy summer, have some fun, rest. And I am also, will not be having office hours until the fall. And if you want to reach me, I am around in the summer, so just shoot me an email at judyappel@berkeley.net, and we can just set up some time for coffee one-on-one. Thank you.
Vice President Danos.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming, and hopefully you'll stay for the discussion. Just very quickly, I wanted to just make sure that everyone is aware of the Administrative Regulation 7310, which is the naming of facilities, and sort of what the process is, just so we're all clear. The first part of the process is to basically dename a school. That is a separate process than the naming of a school. So first the decision, there's a vote by the board to dename a school. Then once that decision is made, then the superintendent appoints a committee that has 6 months to bring forward a name to the school board. In order for the committee to bring forward a name, at least 3/4 of all the committee members must vote to recommend the name. So this is not a situation where it can be a divided committee. It's got to be not unanimous, but a strong support of the committee. And at the end of the day, however, what is clear is that it is the final decision lies with the board. So that while the board might desire to support or not support what the committee recommends, it is the board's ultimate discretion, and there should be no expectations that we are required to follow the recommendation of the committee. And I say this in part because of the past experience when we renamed a school, and if this comes back, perhaps Director Hempel can talk to that experience. But I just want to make sure that people are aware there must be 3 community meetings before it, and if anyone's more interested, they can shoot me an email or look up on their own AR 7310, which is about the naming policy. Thank you. I'm sorry, and one last thing. We had a policy committee meeting yesterday, and our next policy committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 17th at 10 a.m. And then the subsequent one is scheduled for Friday, August 25th at 10 a.m.
Good evening. I want to thank the Thousand Oaks community for coming out tonight. I want to thank you for meeting with me last week. This has been a very, very difficult decision. We reviewed many of the comments, some of the things that you gave us. We looked at enrollment numbers. But I do want to say that I do really appreciate, and I have heard you. So I do thank you. I also want to acknowledge the LeConte community for coming forward with recommending a change for the school. We will follow the process that was laid out to you by Director Daniels. Congratulations to our graduates. And I also want to wish everyone a wonderful summer. So this is our last board meeting, so I will see you all in the fall.
Thanks. I just want to add one thing to what Vice President Daniels said about the name change process, which is that in the information item that's in the agenda for tonight, there's a proposed or a possible timeline that's outlined. But I think from the district's perspective, that's just a proposed timeline. And if the site feels like it needs more time to do either part of the process that Vice President Daniels described within the confines of the policy, which I think is 6 months for the second part. At least from my perspective, that's perfectly fine and appropriate. That in general, although the board has the final determination of both whether to dename a school and to rename a school, we want the process to be driven by the school site. I'm excited about what at least one or maybe both of you mentioned in the public comment about the opportunity to use a renaming process as a real education in civic engagement for the students of LeConte. So thank you for bringing that forward, and we'll see where it ends up. I want to thank you all from Thousand Oaks for being here tonight, and also to apologize to you for not coming to the meeting that you all had with Superintendent Evans and Director Leva Cutler a week or so ago, which I planned to come to and wanted to come to, and had this accident that afternoon and couldn't make it. But I was expecting to be there, and I think you all maybe were told that I would be there. So I know that Dr. Evans mentioned that I couldn't make it, but I wanted to apologize because I was looking forward to seeing you all at that meeting. Okay. That concludes the board comment.
Excuse me, Ty.
Yes.
I also wanted to say I also appreciate everyone that came. I was going to save those kinds of remarks for when the item came up on the agenda regarding the bilingual program, but because maybe not everyone will be there, I just also want to say I really appreciate that everyone came up and understand that this is a difficult decision no matter what we do when it comes up, and that parents have certainly been heard.
Thank you, Director Hempel. Now we'll consider the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Director Leva Cutler. Second by Vice President Daniels. All in favor? Oh, we have to do a roll call.
Director Leva Cutler?
Yes.
Director Hempel?
Yes.
Director Appel?
Yes.
Vice President Daniels?
Yes.
President Alper?
Yes. Okay, now we're going to hear item 12.1, public disclosure of collective bargaining agreements.
Is you vetted?
We just approve it. Yeah, make a motion.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to accept the, where are we? Which one are we at?
The motion would be to approve the public disclosure document.
Yes.
Motion by Director Appel. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Director Leva Cutler. Can we have a roll call vote?
Director Leva Cutler?
Yes.
Director Hempel?
Yes.
Director Appel?
Yep.
Vice President Daniels?
Yes.
President Alper?
Yes. Okay. Moving on to item 12.2.
So the district is proud to ask the board to approve the TA between the Berkeley Federation of Teachers for the successor agreement for 2017-19. This has been a process that we had in bargaining with them, and we are proud to bring this agreement to the board, for the board to approve this TA.
All right, can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept the tentative agreement.
Motion by Director Leva Cutler to accept the tentative agreement with the Berkeley Federation of Teachers. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh. Do you want to second it, Director Hempel?
It doesn't matter.
Well, I heard you. Second by Director Hempel. Is there any discussion or comments?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's have a roll call vote.
Director Leva Cutler?
Yes.
Director Hempel?
Yes.
Director Appel?
Yes.
Vice President Daniels?
Yes.
President Alper?
Yes.
Go
ahead.
We didn't have time for discussion, but I just wanted to say that, I know that in public comment there was some discussion about the TA, and I just feel incumbent to say that I'm very excited about this TA that we were able to reach with our teachers union. I feel like we really were able to accomplish a lot, and particularly in a year where our budget is very tight. I think that there was just a really positive and productive process, and I'm really excited about some of the outcome of this. I feel like it was a really big year, a really positive agreement. So I'm just wanted to thank the teachers union, Kathy Campbell sitting in the back, and our negotiating team, the team on both sides, because I think we really we reached a really great agreement this year.
Thank you. Now we will hear item 12, what was 12.5, which is the recommendation regarding Thousand Oaks bilingual.
So before Director Scuderi talks about the program, the recommended changes, and the reason why, I just want to acknowledge the long history of bilingual education at Thousand Oaks. We recognize also and acknowledge that the program has reached quite a few students over the years, and proud of their accomplishments. But over the last couple of years, at least since I've been here, the program has changed considerably. And Assistant Superintendent Scuderi will talk about that change. And due to those changes, we feel that the program needs to reflect some of the changes. And also, we're recommending to the board a proposal to phase out the bilingual program and bring a Latino heritage program that will have several different components to the program. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Scuderi and our Director, Francisco Martinez.
Good evening, board members, staff, community. I will move somewhat quickly through these slides, since I think in light of the superintendent's meeting last week, several other meetings at the school site, a number of information exchanges with the board, that some of the particulars and the details are out there. So I'll be very brief moving through this, get to the recommendation, and then if there are questions, we'll respond. I wanted to preface this brief discussion with the fact that the original and only real clear definition in the EL master plan for the current program is defined as a maintenance Spanish bilingual program, a program that is designed for native Spanish-speaking English learners and native Spanish-speaking bilingual students only. That's the language of our master plan. And I think in an effort to combat some of the enrollment challenges over the last couple of years, that has been modified. That has not been the true definition of what we've done. And I just wanted to put that up there by way of contrast to some of the things we've tried over the last couple of years. Challenges and efforts, we've talked at length about shifts in demographics. We've talked about the fact that our assessment scores, that we lowered the threshold for Spanish proficiency at one point to try to bolster the enrollment. This year we switched those assessments and are currently using the IPT, which is a new assessment that's been used successfully to gauge progress with students at LeConte. It was the opinion of many of the folks who are involved in that testing process that it was superior to the pre-LOS and even to many years ago. I forget what the original, the pre-LOS assessment was. The cohort enrollment targets have been lowered at points over the last 2 or 3 years to just try to get 15 students in the class. And again, that low enrollment certainly has its costs. The TO staff has reviewed assessment documents historically for transparency. We've looked at assessment documents, and that led to a change in the assessment we're using. Our current K class that we're running is running with varying levels of Spanish, and includes English-only students. So again, I think in our well-intentioned attempt to keep the program enrolled, we've come some distance from what the original definition of the bilingual maintenance program was. And under-enrollment across the cohorts, whether we like to talk about it or not, does add an expense. In other words, if our program is enrolled with 15 students and there's supposed to be 23 students per class, if you look at that across the grade levels in that cohort, there's a staffing expense that comes along with that. So the proposal tonight, after much discussion, is to phase out the maintenance bilingual program at Thousand Oaks and to replace it with a Latino heritage program, which will have strong language components. This is very much a program and a proposal that we envision developing with the community, so I want to make it abundantly clear that while we've got some broad strokes up here, there's still a lot of refining and a lot of space for the community to participate in kind of composing what this ultimately looks like. The major components, when we say heritage program, we're looking at education and academic tutoring, or both, in a foreign language. These are CDE definitions of heritage programs. California Department of Education, sorry. Education on the culture, traditions, or history of a country other than the United States. A program that offers culturally enriching activities, including, but not limited to, art, dancing, games, singing, based on the culture or customs of a country other than the United States. And also making an effort to maintain membership in state or national cultural or language associations. Again, these are some broad guidelines, and I think they summarize the type of program we would be aspiring to as an alternative. Should this proposal go through, we're envisioning a community-based design process. It is an ambitious schedule, but just to run through it, this was in the board agenda and in some previous communication. We would like to get a committee together in this July. We would like to convene the committee in early August to discuss design, all the research and options, and really get a preliminary proposal in front of the board by October. And remember, this timeline needs to move forward, because if we're going to implement this program in 1819, kindergarten fair in December, student assignments made after the first of the year, et cetera. So we don't have an entire year to get that preliminary part. So we're looking at a pretty compressed timeline up front. The committee will present the proposal to the TO community and the board at the board's October 25th, 2017 meeting. That's our preliminary goal. We would request final approval from the board at the mid-November meeting, which would give us then time to advertise to families the basic proposal, preliminary details, give us about 6 months to refine the program and kind of go back and forth with kind of refining and shaping with the TO community and the committee, and then start the new program in September of 2018. For 17-18 and the gradual phase out, again, we've communicated this I think to the board through Friday notes. I'll summarize it briefly for the community. The bilingual program as it is now would continue in the 17-18 school year by utilizing combination classes. In 17-18, there would be 5 bilingual classes at Thousand Oaks, a K-1 combo, a 1-2 combo, a grades 3, 4, and 5 class. The superintendent has authorized a series of supports for next year, one-time support in the form of paid curriculum development hours to teachers to assist with planning over the summer. An additional .20, which I believe is being considered through the LCAP proposal tonight, which could provide additional resources for math and allow the principal to do some regrouping during the school week. There also, I don't know if it made it onto my slide, there's also been a one-time approval of a .12 FTE in additional prep hours. With a K-1 combo, there's sort of that additional time after K dismissal happens where a kindergarten teacher has that kind of informal prep time throughout the day. We want to be cognizant of that, and the superintendent intends to provide that through one-time funds to support the K-1 combo next year. So that is essentially our summary. If there are questions or anything else that we can make clear relative to the proposal, we'd be happy to do so.
Let's first see if there are questions before people have comments. Are there?
Just a technical question. So in the 18-19 school year, assuming that the current program was phased out and the heritage program took place, what would that bilingual program look like? Do we know in terms of how many classes there'd be, combination, or is that a year-by-year determination? Because we're phasing it.
Yeah.
The proposal is to phase it out, not do it all at once. So
correct.
You'd have grades 1 through 5, but do we happen to know whether there would be a continued need for combo classes, or how that might look like, or is that? Can we know that now?
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that we'd be in a place very similar to where we were at the TWI schools as we've been phasing those programs out towards consolidation. So I would be surprised if there wouldn't be a need for combination classes in that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Couple of questions. So I'm curious to know your response. I guess this is to you, Francisco, about there was some testimony at the beginning of the meeting about, particularly from one parent, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, who wasn't admitted to the program after registering her child, or that was her understanding. So just if you could explain maybe to the parents, to us, to kind of what's happened, because we've heard several stories of parents who have written us saying that they didn't know about the program, or they weren't admitted to the program. And so if you could just explain a little bit more about that, that'd be helpful.
I want to go a little bit back, and I will answer your question. Yeah. One of the things is that for the past 3 years, and the superintendent and Superintendent Scuderi, we have talked about the numbers when they come in, the numbers of students who apply, and then the assessments. After the assessments are done, I don't do the assessments. The assessments are done by teachers, and then they provide the numbers to us. They tell us who is an English-speaking, Spanish-speaking student or an English-speaking student. So they provide that. My office doesn't do the assessments. I just get the results. Over the past 3 years, we have talked about the lower number of students, and the teachers from LeConte and Thousand Oaks have been coming with me to try to recruit students. So we go to Franklin Preschool, Hopkins Preschool, Centro Vida. We also go to, and sometimes to Head Starts when they invite us, and King CDC. So they come, and also at the kindergarten fair. So we do a lot of outreach. In order for a parent to, I don't really know the specifics about the specific person, and I'll try to speak with her after the meeting, is that they need to request the Thousand Oaks bilingual program. We had forms that are in Spanish and that they're in English. So if she didn't request, my assumption is that she didn't request the Thousand Oaks bilingual program, I think that's my, that's what I'm thinking, but I'm not really sure. And because every kid who requested Thousand Oaks bilingual program or the LeConte program, if they said that they spoke Spanish, in one of the 4 questions in the English, the language survey, we sent them to be assessed. So everybody was assessed. So I don't know, I would have to look at our form and find out. At that point, there were discussions, and I didn't know, my office didn't know what was going to happen with the program, because there were discussions about, are we having a full class, and then are we having a combination class? So and that kept going back and forth, and my office didn't know what that was, because that decision hadn't been firmed. So when we don't know what's going to happen, in order to not over-assign the class where we would have too many students in a class, we would say, give us your name. Once we know more information, if there are spaces, then we will add them. And even some parents here said that in the beginning they were on the waiting list, is because we didn't know. And prior to 2013 or 12-13, the definition of the bilingual program at Thousand Oaks was different than when it was changed in the master plan in 2012-13. Before, it was a Spanish maintenance program where students needed to be EL students. And so then, so families would come in, if according to the assessment, if they didn't assess as have been proficient in Spanish, then we would have to say, you need to wait, and then many times spaces were available, and then we added those kids once spaces were available in the program. So.
I'm so sorry. So I think I was almost asking the question, it's just, because I thought I knew the answer, and I thought you'd affirm it, but now I'm confused. So my understanding had been that there were not enough. What I do know is that, and from what you're saying, and I really believe it, and I've heard it from a lot of people, that we have done, there was a request last year and the year before to increase our outreach and our visibility and our education about this program, and that the school sites at LeConte and at Thousand Oaks were actively involved, both parents and teachers, and I'm really, from what I understand, and someone could correct me if I'm wrong, that there have been real efforts to really make sure that families know about the programs that are available. Of course, there's going to be not everyone's going to hear about it. There always might be people, there might be the exception, but I think that that's true. And then my understanding had been is that just because of the changing demographics of Berkeley, that we have fewer monolingual, Spanish-speaking families or kids who are coming from monolingual Spanish-speaking homes or primarily Spanish-speaking homes. And really that's the intention of the bilingual maintenance program, is to serve the families as an option for helping to address English language learners' needs. And so my understanding is that we didn't have the numbers of families from English language learning, EL families, so that's why we, changed the criteria and we were trying to make the numbers, but making the numbers also kind of compromises the program. So if I misunderstand that, then maybe I need to be corrected.
No, you're correct.
I think it's worth looking
But then why would you have people on the waiting list? If we didn't have enough numbers, why would there be people? Francisco, I'm not trying to trap you. It's an honest question.
This year, the issue was that we didn't know whether there was going to be a combination class or there was going to be a full class. They were.
But why would we, if we had enough kids for a class, why would we have a combination class?
I think.
Do you understand I'm confused? Like, it seems like we would accept all of the kids that we had that had qualified, and then we'd have to see what we do.
The only family that I know, and I learned today, is the family that came to the board, they spoke at the board and said that, so that's the only one that I know of. All of the other kids who were assessed and they were determined to be bilingual or Spanish speaking, they were all accepted into the Thousand Oaks bilingual program.
And this is not simply an admissions issue. I think this goes back to our well-intended but perhaps ultimately misguided attempt to keep the program moving forward with a definition other than its original definition. And there were times where, prior to the kindergarten fair this year, we had some exchanges with folks in the community, some discussions with the administrator at TO, met with some TO staff. And the idea was, hey, it's still a bilingual maintenance program. We're going to prioritize the recruitment of kids that meet that original definition. And then when we didn't get those numbers, then again, we're being asked to pivot to include kids who are not in that definition. So I don't think this is just an admissions issue. I think this is, again, our well-intended, perhaps misguided effort to keep a program moving along the lines of a definition that's something other than its original definition. It's worth noting that we've heard these concerns, and we by no means want to discount the concerns. So we looked through every student that was assessed in 16-17 for the 16-17 school year, and if you look at that original definition of who the program was for, there are 10 students that met that definition via the assessment, who are either Spanish monolingual or who were Spanish dominant. Of those 10 students, 4 were assigned to LeConte, 3 were assigned to Thousand Oaks, 1 went to a private school, 1 moved, and 1 decided they wanted no bilingual schooling and ended up going to one of the other BUSD schools. So those are the numbers.
That was 10 altogether.
10 who met either or definition. In addition, to be respectful to the community's efforts to put forth additional names, we took the list that we received from the community representatives at TO. We went through each one of those students. 3 of the students on that list we received had been assigned to Thousand Oaks. 1 was pending an assignment after June 17th. One parent on the list or one student on the list, family that was on that list, said that they had requested TO. We called that family and they said that was not the case, that they had not requested the TO program. Another student was assigned in mid-March. 1 was assigned to TO, but the parent did not want the bilingual program. And there was another student who we didn't find any follow-up information on. I'm not sure that student ever was enrolled in a Berkeley school. And I'm not saying that to be contentious or to be overly defensive. I just want to get it out there that we have taken this information and these names and looked at these categories and spent some serious hours going up and down the list, myself and Mr. Martinez together.
Can I ask one quick follow-up question? And so just to make it clear to kind of the whole community, and we have how many kindergarten classes at LeConte that we hope, in order to maintain the integrity of that and the fidelity of that program, would have be 50-50? There's 3, so that would require 30?
There are 3 sections.
There's 3 sections, so that would require 30 Spanish-speaking students to fill those slots to keep our TWI program like how it's designed, balanced between English speakers and Spanish, predominantly Spanish-speaking children.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So I think the challenge has been, and I keep trying to put my finger on it, and it's the titled program of bilingual maintenance. I know, and I know it also in my child care center, I'm not able to fill my classroom with native speakers any longer. 20 years ago, I was able to do that. And I know that we haven't been able to do that at Thousand Oaks either. So I think we've been trying to fit the title and the master plan to the population that we're serving right now, which is not native speakers. And if it is, it's a handful of families that are. So what I'm thinking, what we want in our schools is a bilingual immersion program for bilingual speakers, for native and non-native speakers. We don't want a program, we want a program that serves children on all levels to immerse them in Spanish and so that they can become bilinguals, not a maintenance program for native speakers to transition them to English, to proficiency. We've been trying to fit this model, this name of what we have in our master plan to the population that's changing over time. And I think, and I've been trying to think about it's not a dual immersion program. It wouldn't be in competition to Lacan. It would be essentially, these are families giving native speakers the priority to Lacan or Thousand Oaks to be in either program, but the understanding that their children are going to receive 80% in kindergarten Spanish, 20% in English. That is the understanding. We have children from, I even know our bilingual preschool program in Berkeley Unified doesn't fill up also with native speakers. So I think we've been challenged by trying to fit what we say in our district that we will provide and seeing the population that we have. I want to keep that bilingual maintenance program in our master plan because my hope one day the floodgates will open and we will return to having more immigrant families. But for right now, I think what Thousand Oaks community wants is a bilingual immersion program for native and non-native speakers. And that's what I would be proposing that we have. I think to continue this year, and I know that twisted all around for all of us, but I just kept thinking, you know, what we're having and what we're experiencing is that parents want an immersion program in Spanish in our schools. They want LeConte. That model is also a very evidence-based and proven model, and parents want that experience. But I also think there's parents who want a Spanish immersion program. That brings in that diversity of all families under one umbrella. I would like to continue having next year what's being proposed of next year, continuing with the combo model, but I want our teachers in our school to have support in how to operate a combo class from kindergarten to the 5th grade. I think there's definitely need for support on that and resources. And I would like to make sure that the master plan includes the bilingual maintenance. If there ever would be a change in our district, that we would be able to provide that. But for right now and for the next year, that we do have a task force that look at that possibility of our district having at Thousand Oaks a bilingual immersion program.
Director Hemphill, do you have anything I want to make sure we get you, if you have anything you want to say?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. You know, this is very difficult for me because as an African American...
Karen, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are you using your headphones?
Yes.
Can you take them off and talk into the phone?
I'll try that, yes. Hello?
Yeah, that's better.
Karen?
You still there?
Can you hear me now?
Just talk some more. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. No, we can't hear you, Karen.
Hello?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, well, I just put my headphones back on.
Oh, okay. Well,
I couldn't hear anything with them off.
okay, all right, this is fine. We can hear you. Just speak as loudly as you can. Thanks.
Yes, this is very difficult for me because, I have lived in Berkeley now for almost 40 years. And I remember when the majority of this district was of color, black and brown. And now, as Director Levy Cutler said, we have just a handful of monolingual students speaking Spanish in our district. And I know that in some of our kindergarten classes now, or first grade classes, there may only be 1 or 2 black students in the class. And so I am very concerned about a lot of the programs that we now have that support our students of color. Having said that, I will be voting to transition to a heritage program, which I hope that the community that is here and others that are not will be involved in making sure that it is truly a heritage program that focuses on language as well as Latinx culture. I also hope that as we finalize the ethnic studies requirement for 9th grade at the high school and look at expanding our ethnic studies department, both our Latinx department and our African American department, that we find more and more ways to not layer but weave in the amazing heritage that African Americans and Latinx and Mexican Americans particularly have made. After all, we are, well, not me because I'm in Washington, D.C., but the school board is in a geographic region that used to belong to Mexico. So, but the truth is that this program was designed to be for a population that, quite frankly, unfortunately, is no longer here. And there is a dual immersion program at LeConte. I remember when the decision was made to put that program at LeConte. There were many people, including myself, who disagreed and thought that it should be at Rosa Parks because Rosa Parks was traditionally more where the Latinx community had traditionally lived in Berkeley. And I understand that the other school that has traditionally been a center of the particularly Mexican American culture in Berkeley is Thousand Oaks. So I understand that there's a desire to keep the legacy alive. But that we're going to be facing in the next 1 or 2 years budget deficits that are going to require very painful cuts that will affect all students. But when we say affect all students, we all know that those types of cuts affect black and brown students even more. And so the opportunity to keep a program that we want but is really just not supported by the population that we have now and that there are alternatives is just not something that I as a trustee can do. Regardless of how much I truly, truly, truly feel for the pain, particularly of the Mexican American community, who I know, took to the streets, so to speak, to be able to get a bilingual program in Berkeley all those years ago. And I absolutely feel for my friend and ally, my walking companion, my confidant, Beatrice, that this has got to be the most amazing, difficult thing for her to even have to discuss. And I can only imagine what she will feel if, at the end of the day, a majority of the board decides to vote as I will be voting. It is incredibly difficult for me to make this decision. And I guess I'll be just repeating myself if I say anything more, so I will end there.
Karen, can I ask if you heard my comments about a Spanish, a bilingual immersion program for native and non-native speakers at Thousand Oaks?
I did hear that, and maybe that's discussed as part of what a Spanish heritage program looks like, but I don't know if we can support a bilingual program at the same time that we also have a dual immersion program, and that would be something that would be hard for me, to decide today, but I don't see that would be impossible to be discussed as part of looking what a Spanish heritage program is.
So you're saying that could be part of the conversation of the task force, the advisory group, to discuss as one option?
Yes.
What about the inclusion of the bilingual program, the continuation, to continue in the master plan for English language learners, the bilingual program that should our population change, we won't pull that out, we would keep that Berkeley would consider that?
I think that it's time for the English language learner master plan to be redone because the population is changing, not just in terms of native Spanish speakers, but I have been thinking recently that I don't know enough about our students and our families who speak other languages, for example, Arabic or languages from India, Hindu and Punjabi and other languages. And I don't feel as a board member that I know enough about that need and how that's being supported by our English language learner. I mean, in California, we've tended to focus for obvious and good reasons on Spanish speakers, but that reality is changing. And so I think that we really need to have a review of our whole English language learner plan. But, one of the reasons that I actually like the Spanish heritage idea is that it does open up the ability to be exposed to Spanish and learn Spanish and then be able to take Spanish at a higher level that you could be I can't say that very well, for more students. We have many African American students that do not choose, for whatever reason, to be either in the dual immersion or do not choose to be in the current bilingual program at Thousand Oaks, that I would hope with a school-wide program like the Spanish Heritage Program would have access to that, to that ability, to that skill, to that exposure.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Scudero, do you have a response to Director Leyva-Cutler's suggestion?
No, I don't. I mean, it's not so much a response. I just want to be cognizant that if we're kind of talking about that seems to me a more protracted process insofar as having to make a delineation between what a bilingual immersion program, what the distinction would be there versus a TWI. So if we were going to have an 80-20 program that was a bilingual program at Thousand Oaks, how would that be different than the 90-10 strategy that a TWI program would entail? I just want us to be cognizant of the kind of way that that type of discussion could expand versus what we're proposing tonight.
Go ahead.
That was great, Karen, Director Hemphill. I really appreciated your comments. And I also feel really saddened by this just in so many ways, because it's, when we're offering something as a district that parents love and is offering the community and the safety and visibility and kids feeling seen that I'm hearing from the parents, it's a hard decision to decide to end that. That being said, I have to weigh as a trustee. I mean, I have to be honest with you. I have to sit here. I'm glad you're here, so I look you in the eyes and say, I feel like I have to balance as a trustee our many different concerns. And when we have classrooms that aren't filling up, that not only means that there's costs as far as and I'm sure you all get this, it's not just costs as far as, for teachers, it also means that if some classes have 15 kids in them, some other kid is sitting in a class that has 23 or 24 kids in it. So it has to balance out over the district in order for us to be able to afford to educate all of our kids. And so, when we look at this program, and I really do feel like the district has tried, and I hope you see that we have tried for several years to make this program work and get kids enrolled in it that are the kids for whom the program was intended. Because I think that the TWI program, although I hear, I'm interested in, because you know so much more about this, I'd be really curious to hear what the difference would be between these two programs. But from what I understand, TWI in many ways has become a lot. There's a lot of bilingual kids in that at LeConte. We're hearing that we're not able to fill it with the 50% native Spanish speakers. So I think there's a lot of students who are allowed, and I think this is true even when it was in 3 different sites. About a third of the kids we'd heard during the testimony when you guys were making that decision to create the program at LeConte, the consolidated program. So I just, looking at that and also looking at how many parents around the district, not only at Thousand Oaks, would love to have their kids have access to a second language. And so I'm excited about the idea of a heritage program, not only for the reasons Karen said, which I thought were really interesting and thoughtful, but also because I'm hoping it can be a model for what we might be able to see in other sites. The superintendent and I were just talking about this, because we are going to have because we're going to have more flex time for the lower grades, we're going to have a little bit more flexibility as far as release time, and maybe that could lead to more exposure to second languages throughout the district, and different heritages and different kind of ethnic studies at a younger age. So and that opens the door to a lot of possibilities for our district. I know that's not much solace for the parents whose kids are currently in the bilingual program at Thousand Oaks, but from looking at this from this broader perspective, I will also be voting with the recommendation to the superintendent. I also want to support, with a friendly amendment, that I want to support Director Leyva Cutler's suggestion that we keep this in the master plan. And I'm open to seeing any ideas or suggestions that come from a task force at the school about what the heritage program could be that could hopefully meet some of the needs of the families. I'm totally open to that, and I look forward to your experience in bringing that information to us. I just really have to look at some point at the bottom line, and that we are having to make major cuts. We're talking about significant cuts next year, the year after next, and so we have to really think about what we can. We have to think responsibly, fiscally responsibly about that. So I'm both very saddened about if this is the decision the board makes. I know, like Karen said, that getting bilingual programs was a very hard-won victory, and I think we need to respect the history of the land and the place where we live. So I'm hoping that we'll find a way to do that, and that you'll be able to help work with us to create something really positive at Thousand Oaks. And again, it's not going to be if it's not what you want, I'm hoping that it can be something else that will be beneficial for the kids that are coming up.
Thank you. I'm going to go against doctor's orders and just take this off, because I can't talk seriously with wearing that thing. But I do want to thank Director Leyva Cutler and Director Hempel and Director Appel for your remarks, which I found very compelling, and I've been thinking about what I wanted to say. This is a issue that I've been thinking about for years, and in the last few months, every night, and I know how important it is to you all, and I know how important it is to all of us, but particularly to our colleague who I worked with, years ago when we were talking about the consolidation of the TWI program at LeConte, and how and whether the Thousand Oaks program fit into that. the TWI, the community of parents and teachers in the TWI community also had to wrestle several years ago with the constriction of the program from 5 strands across the district to 3 because of the same demographic changes that I think necessitate this change as well. And that was very difficult when there were 2 strands at a school that went down to 1, and then ultimately a recognition that in order for the TWI program to survive, it needed to be consolidated at a single site. Director Leva Cutler and I were on the task force that, with some of you as well, that was tasked with recommending the board, I wasn't on the board at the time, with the site that the TWI consolidation would occur at. And like Director Hemphill, I was in favor of Rosa Parks. On that task force, I voted for Rosa Parks. I now actually believe that LeConte was the right choice, and it's been a thriving program, although, as Director Appel just mentioned, I think a review of the master plan with respect to TWI may be in order as well. My understanding of the research is that the 50-50 program, that a program that's 33% monolingual Spanish speakers, 33% bilingual, and 33% English speakers is as well supported by the research as what our master plan says, which is a 50-50 program, but one that we struggle to maintain given the low numbers of monolingual Spanish speakers in the district. I appreciate, Beatrice, your sort of recognition of the I think it's undeniable that the numbers are not there. I know I've participated in outreach on behalf of both the bilingual program and the TWI program with Mr. Martinez's office. Apart from Mr. Martinez's office, we created videos. We went to preschools. We went to grocery stores, passed out literature. I know that those efforts have continued. I know that teachers have been involved in these efforts. I'm skeptical. I appreciate your suggestion. I'm skeptical about whether there's enough of a difference between what you've referred to as a bilingual immersion program that's for native and English speakers that's 80% in Spanish, because I think that sounds very similar to LeConte. LeConte is 90-10. You know, I think that I appreciate that the staff recommendation is to allow the community to develop what the heritage program will be, and so I'm open-minded about it. But I just want to sort of be on the record as being skeptical of an immersion program. For the same reasons that Director Appel said, I'm excited about the possibility of language, of Spanish language. I think our agreement with the teachers union to increase the prep periods in elementary school gives us options for Spanish language instruction across the entire school at Thousand Oaks, which, as Director Appel said, could be a really interesting model for us to pursue. We hear all the time from parents who say, you know, why does my kid not have the opportunity to learn a second language in elementary school? Why do we only provide foreign language, world language in middle school or high school, when all the research shows that's when your brain starts to lose the ability to learn a second language? So, you know, I too find this to be a very difficult decision. I too support the staff recommendation. And I just want to say how much I appreciate the people who came out and have come out over the last few months.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to know from you, Director Leva Cutler, because as you can hear from all of us, we're aware of the impact, not on you personally, but on your life's work and your commitment to it and what we learned from you on that. So I'm kind of curious to know what your alternative proposal would be do you feel that we could, given the reasons that Pasquale laid out, that we could incorporate a consideration of some kind of bilingual immersion or bilingual exposure or something like that program in the discussion of a heritage
Well,
program?
I don't know much about the Latino heritage programs, but I know there's schools in Berkeley that are, the German school is a heritage school that was in Hillside, now it's in Emeryville. There's other schools that have been very successful. I think the model that the 3 hours a week, Berkeley could say, I want something different. We want more language in our schools. We want 5 hours a day. It could be redefined, but I don't want to lock us into one model, that it's only going to be Latino heritage. I would like to open it up to say, what about a Spanish immersion program for native and non-native speakers, which we currently are operating, actually. It's not a maintenance model. It is an immersion model because the students are receiving 80% in Spanish, and they're native and non-native speakers in the classroom. We're doing it already. So it's not really changing, it's just acknowledging we're practicing a model right now already. So how can we support that to be, it's not 50-50 like the model at LeConte. It's not a 50. But it would be making sure if parents who are native speakers want Thousand Oaks, that they would get priority to 2000 Oaks if they wanted it. So what I'm proposing is not to say it's only Latino heritage model. I want parents to look at that model. I would like that task force to look at, but also look at the other possibility of another kind of model would be, that I would suggest, is that Spanish immersion model, that which we are already practicing.
Right.
Well, I don't want to sidetrack the discussion, so I don't want to, like, it seemed like Director Lever Cutler made a comment, and I have some general thoughts about sort of my particular vote, but that would then get us back to where we were before. So I'll be quiet for a little bit in case somebody else wants to sort of chime in.
Well, why don't you go ahead?
It's going to change the end of that conversation. And
well, I'll chime in. Hello?
Yeah. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay. You know, as I said, I don't have an objection about, I don't have any preconceived notions of what a Spanish heritage program looks like, but I am concerned about, and I don't know what it would mean to essentially have two Spanish immersion schools in our district as opposed to one, and whether that's sustainable. I have no doubt that there are many families in this district who are either bilingual or even completely English speaking, who would appreciate the opportunity to to essentially reach bilingualism as part of their public school education. But I think to look at whether or not we can, I don't even know what the cost is in terms of, it's the same number of teachers, but for example, not all the teachers that are at Thousand Oaks now would be trained to be able to teach in Spanish, to do Spanish instruction. So I just didn't know I don't know the cost and I don't know the logistics of doing that. And I am a little concerned about if there's a lot that the committee focus on a certain parameter as opposed to spending a lot of time on something that at the end of the day the board may not feel that it can support because of the immensity of what's being asked, and then the community feels that they're not listened to yet again. So I don't know how to reconcile that because I don't have any specific concept of what a Spanish heritage program is, but I don't think that the intention is to create a second LeConte.
Yeah, I have the same concern. I hear that the difference is that the student population isn't necessarily 50% native Spanish speaking and 50% English speaking, but if the instruction is essentially the same, which is a decrease, start at 80-90% in Spanish and decrease to 50%, by the time of 5th grade, to me, that's essentially, will be seen as, and I think will be, just another strand of TWI, or at least it will be seen as another strand of TWI. That I don't think I could support.
Would the board be open to at least that task force to having that discussion? And with an expert from Alameda County, UC Berkeley, we can definitely draw down the experts in bilingual programming to be able to be part of that task force. Yes. I mean, this was, and Karen knows this well, this was my biggest issue in 2012, that what was going to happen was going to water down the bilingual program at Thousand Oaks. I argued at that back then, and we're now here because we didn't provide the sufficient support to Thousand Oaks back then. And I
voted with you.
Yeah, I know. So I would like the task force, to look at the model, to look at the possibility of that model, that it doesn't duplicate the dual. But in language it would, I mean, obviously. But to look at that, at least the very possibility. And I'm not saying that the heritage model is not a good model or a possible model that parents might want to embrace also, because we could redefine what that looks like too for Thousand Oaks.
Yeah, no, I don't want to constrain this committee or this task force. I think what Director Hempel warned about is I have the same concern, which is the committee going down a road that the board then can't support. We're talking about a school-wide heritage program. Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, my only concern is that you're narrowing the focus and you're concentrating on one particular group as opposed to an entire school. And so, and we're looking at an entire school being involved in this process. So that's it. That's my concern.
So I don't want to put constraints on the committee, but I think that, except to say that this is what I think the recommendation is, to create a school-wide program. So I think it's very unlikely that we could, for the reasons Director Hempel just mentioned, support a school-wide immersion program. But
I don't know why not. I think it's the Thousand Oaks, all of Thousand Oaks would embrace an immersion program, a Spanish immersion.
Vice President Dinos.
Well, I'm not exactly sure how divergent the board is. It's not clear to me, given that I think there's concerns expressed about the scope of the committee's work. Yeah, it's not clear. I mean, I think what I hear President Alper, Director Hempel saying is that there are at least 2 board members who are concerned about a bilingual immersion program and whether that would sort of pedagogically be appropriate given the existence of a 2-way immersion program at LeConte. And what I hear Director Leva-Cutler saying is that let's at least explore it and see whether that overlap is appropriate or not. I have some comments about why I was going to support the staff recommendation, and I had all this great philosophizing about the challenges we have on the board. I don't think it's appropriate to say that anymore. I guess I would turn to the superintendent and say, given what you've heard from because I think in an ideal world we could unanimously support something around this, given the challenges of the decision. And I guess to the superintendent, do you feel like it would be possible to explore what Director Leva-Cutler is suggesting as part of the scope, with the understanding that there is likely a majority of the board that has expressed concern that we'd want to make sure that they're pedagogically compatible and not repetitive or duplicative. I don't know if that is an accurate summary of where there is overlap, but I wanted to put that out there in an attempt to try to find something that might move us forward.
Yeah, and I do want to hear from you, Dr. Evans. I do want to say that a piece of that I I have to admit I'm challenged by also has to do, I mean, I think part of it's pedagogical and part of it is resources. So how much that costs, and also what are any opportunity costs? Because I'm also conscious of making sure that we are you know, that we're serving the needs of the students best throughout the district. And I think that if we can figure out a way to do that, that is cost, you know, is cost fairly, like cost neutral, and then provide this other great opportunity for our students, I think that would be great. It's hard for me to see that because I think the two-way immersion, you know, is costing, you know, costs additional resources, so it's hard to see how it wouldn't be that way, but maybe there is a way. I mean, our Principal Corn's here, maybe she could speak to that. But, what?
So,
I mean, I didn't mean to open a can of worms. I just am saying. So, yeah. Dr. Evans, maybe you're.
So I actually do agree. I'm very skeptical about going down that road. I think we will end up back to where we are right now, and having the same decision to make right now.
Well, but just to be clear, the recommendation is to phase out the existing program and replace it with a heritage program. So that's the decision that I hear a majority of the board supporting. If we have to replace it with something, if we phase it out, we can replace it with a traditional general education program, like every other elementary school except LeConte.
Yeah, I'd like not replace, but redefine. I think it's redefining the existing bilingual program at Thousand Oaks. That's what we're doing. We're redefining it. It's going to be redefined in our master plan also.
So I hear you, Director Lavacala, that is what you are recommending. I don't get the sense that there is a majority of this board that wants to do that. I think where there is overlap is this idea that we would not constrain the committee about what the new program could look like. And that would allow the committee to explore immersion-related options that would, whether it's a traditional immersion program, whether it's not, with the caveat that it would need to be distinct from the two-way immersion program, so that we were not running two separate immersion programs. And what I hear, and I don't have your depth of knowledge, and I obviously don't have the knowledge of many of the community members here about the distinction between that, and I think that rather than trying to have this board figure that out, perhaps we could spend a couple of minutes crafting some language around the scope of the committee's work, so that there's additional clarity around what that would involve and not involve. I mean, for the record, I am supportive of the staff's recommendation, primarily because, well, the philosophizing I was going to offer is this, that there is never a clear-cut decision, and I've now been on the board for 6.5 years. This is not the hardest decision that has been presented to us, but it's one of the harder ones, and there is arguments that we've heard that are very convincing. You've been before us for the last number of meetings. There's been concern about this and community input a year ago and 2 years ago. This issue has been a struggle for this district for a number of years. And at some point, for me, you continue to sort of weigh the pros and the cons, and at some point there's got to be sort of a decision made, either we're going to keep it or we're going to not.
Keep it.
So I guess I would, in the hopes of trying to find some effort to move forward that would work for all of the board members, I guess that I would offer something along the lines of adopt the staff recommendation with the charge to a committee that within 6 months it would explore alternative program options, including a heritage program, and including a program that would involve this isn't a technical term, but various immersion options, with the caveat that it should not be duplicative of two-way immersion or something to that effect. Because I don't think there is an interest among majority of the board to create a second two-way immersion program. I don't think that's the desire of, I don't want to speak for the community. I don't know your strongest desire, but what I thought I heard was that there's not an interest to create a two-way immersion program at TO either, that it's distinct and there's a distinct need. And there may be a way to get at that. Now, I think what we should be honest with ourselves, we don't think that that is the case, that this has been a process that staff and community have undergone for a number of years, but that we wouldn't preclude that possibility from occurring if it were to result. I don't know if that's going to get us all 5 votes. I don't know if that gets us there, but just to put that out there in an attempt to try to move us
I
forward.
would say that I do not expect, as I said, my friend, my colleague, my confidant, my ally, Beatrice Levy-Cutler, to vote for any motion that would end the program, and I understand why that would be so, and I am sure that if I was in her shoes, I would do the same. I would find it hard not to do the same thing. I would say that I don't know that this makes sense, but I guess I would want the committee, that if at the end of the day the committee is going to, after their deliberation, propose a dual immersion or bilingual type of program, that they also propose a second alternative. Because I am concerned that if what comes back is something that it's very difficult to distinguish from LeConte, or would continue some of the same issues in terms of class size, in terms of equity among students who are not in the program, that it may be very difficult for a board to support that. And then we would have nothing that would have had community support for Spanish, more of a different type of program that's, whatever a Spanish heritage program would look like. And I would not want the community, district, the board to be in that position.
I really appreciate the attempt to provide guidance that leaves options open. I just want to state that it makes me very concerned that we would be going from tasking a committee to develop a program that has broadly and conceptually already been outlined to sending a committee out to consider options and then refine those options. I think you're extending a timeline that makes me very concerned that all of those issues can be resolved in time for when we need to start advertising this program next November. If we're talking about an immersion strand, even a single strand, there's going to be issues about transportation that need to be resolved. Costs that are involved. So again, I think one of the recurring issues on this that I know has been frustrating for community and for staff is lack of clarity on the way forward. So while I respect the ideas and the desire to have consideration of this other option, it changes the dynamics of what we're asking a committee to do when we say go out and kind of decide which of these choices we're going to fully develop. I don't think that between July and November we can fully develop both of the options that we're talking about in broad strokes tonight. However, I serve at the pleasure of the superintendent and the board, and if that's where we land, we'll explore those options.
Any more thoughts?
Earlier for the principal to be able to speak. If she wishes to speak, would you give her an opportunity?
Yes.
Do you want to?
Please, let me speak. Please.
This is a board discussion. So I'm gonna keep it at the people who presented. Are there any thoughts in response to what Mr. Scuderi said, Josh?
No, I completely understand, and I think that's probably the wiser course. I do, in an effort to try to, I think in any of these difficult situations, moving forward together is better than moving forward, not moving forward together. And so in the hopes of trying to find some common ground, I'm offering that. I think that it may not be satisfactory, and it may make things more difficult. I think that, yeah, I mean, I just think,
I think I think Thousand Oaks deserves this opportunity to have that conversation. It's been that long, and the issues that we've had with admissions, the issues that we've had over the many years, I think it deserves to have that conversation about its school. It didn't have that conversation when we consolidated. So we never had that conversation in public and in the community. So it does deserve at least 2 meetings to make a decision, or 3 meetings or something to say, and we're going to put a limit to what decision we're going to make in terms of what focus school-wide we're going to have as a district, as a school, if that's what we're going to do. And put a limit on it. I know I participated in the task force, and that went very long. We participated. But yes, we have to put a limit to it, but I think it's worth exploring. Because I don't think it's expensive, because I think it's what Thousand Oaks has already been doing. The materials are there, the teachers are there. We simply don't offer transportation. Just continue to do it. It's in the North Zone. If you're in the North Zone, you get offered the transportation. It wouldn't be that way.
So what I want the board to understand, there's a difference, because as we go down this road, we're moving farther and farther away from something that is school-wide. And I really would like to see us move towards something that's school-wide and not just for one, like a program that we have right now.
That should happen anyway.
Don't put this community at the expense.
Well, Vice President Tanos, did you make were you making a motion?
Well, I'm curious to know, Director Cutler, if you'd be interested in making a motion that we could consider in the interest of trying to find unanimity moving forward. If that may not be possible, I don't know. But I think without having something concrete to sort of reflect on, I think it'd be hard to know whether we can get behind unanimously something together.
I would suggest, and I may be jumping in too soon, that we do the staff recommendation in 2 parts.
What would be the 2 parts?
One is the elimination of the current program, and the second is what happens next.
But Director Hempel, when would you propose we do the second part? Because the timing of it is.
So not in terms of like a final decision, but in terms of.
Oh, 2 votes right now.
The committee, yes.
Would you want to make a motion, Director Hempel?
Well, I had recommended that it's not the phasing out, but the redefining of the existing bilingual program at Thousand Oaks. I make a motion to redefine the existing bilingual program at Thousand Oaks.
Okay, the motion is from Director Labor Cutler to redefine the program at Thousand Oaks. Is there a second for that motion?
Come on, Karen Hempel.
Come on.
Okay, would someone like to make another motion? I'll make the motion in two parts. So the first motion is a motion to phase out the existing Thousand Oaks bilingual program. Is there a second?
I'm happy to second it, but I'm curious to know why we want to do this separately. I think, it may not be possible, but I think it would allow us to move forward more deliberately if we can get behind a collective approach. And if it's doing it better is to do it separate, I'm happy to do that, but I don't know.
So I feel, go ahead, Karen.
The only reason I asked to do it separately is that I am sure that we will not get a unanimous vote on phasing out the program, but I was thinking that there might be a way of getting a unanimous vote on going forward. But that might be splitting hairs in terms of what the end result will be, so, I would vote affirmatively. I would vote yes on either the entire staff recommendation as is or by separating the two, but I don't know if that will really make a difference in terms of us getting some clarity about what the second part in terms of what the committee's charge is, but we could try to do that.
So are you seconding that motion?
Which motion?
The first part, the motion is the first motion to phase out the existing bilingual program at Thousand Oaks.
I thought
the first one was redefined. The second one was
that motion failed, though.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah, the first motion failed. Right, that I know.
Well, can I just? I know we're waiting to hear if Karen's going to second that motion, but I think for me, I'm totally usually with you, and I actually really appreciate, Josh, you're trying to find a way that we can all agree. But I also think that in this case, again, along with, I think this is similar to what Karen was saying. I mean, we all know that Director Leyva Cutler is like this. It's a lot to ask her in any circumstance to vote to close this program. So I guess that's what I feel like. I don't necessarily feel the need to get her to do that, but I do feel compelled by a lot of your arguments. So I think to do the right thing, I don't, whether it's separate or together, what I want to talk about is what's the alternative to, I think we're close to what the staff is recommending, but I think that what we're hearing is some more flexibility about what the Thousand Oaks community is able to come up with as an alternative that's beyond a heritage program, which we don't know exactly what that would be. I will say that I'm just going to be on record that I share the concerns. I don't think we need to recreate a program that looks very similar in many ways. Maybe not when you're deeply embedded in it, but on a lot of different factors. We'd have to have very clear indicators about what's different and what's the same between our current immersion program, which I have to be honest, I'm worried about our current two-way immersion program because I'm concerned about the children in that program, that they are not getting the experience of full immersion, because that is what that program is supposed to be. And if we have another immersion program, I will be honest that that's a concern district-wide that I have, that we will end up compromising a huge investment that we've made to consolidate the TWI program at LeConte. I mean, that's just a reality. It's just true. So I'm concerned about that too, but I also hear there's another component of this that you're trying to maintain, and I'm interested in learning more about that, Beatrice, because I trust you immensely. So I think my suggestion is that we move to eliminate the current program, and that we then have that we put some parameters on the community process to develop the heritage program or the replacement program that is not a continuation of what we currently have. Just to be clear, that's not, I don't think but we don't have a majority board support of that, but something that could maybe include some components of what you're talking about, Beatrice, in a way that would respect the community's wishes. And maybe that's not possible. Maybe we just need to say no. Like maybe that's just the reality. But I'd like to try to find some way that we could do that.
I guess part of the reason why I was hopeful for a board majority is because, unanimous board, is if we are going to design a heritage program or a new program, and I want to underline new, because when we consolidated at LeConte, we expanded the bilingual program from grades K3 to K5. So now that there may have, we've heard the criticism from many of you and from other members of the community about not supporting it enough. From as one board member's perspective, And I think Assistant Superintendent Scuderi laid out some of the efforts that we have made. Whether they've not been sufficient, I feel like it had been sufficient enough for me to feel like that the current status quo is unsustainable. And so what I'm trying to do is get us united around a way forward. Because if we move forward in one particular direction, it will be, my concern is how the support for that and that the ability of that community committee to really create a heritage program or whatever it is that as many people as possible can get behind. And so if that means that we're creating a more difficult task for this committee, I think on balance there's some value in that. But that being said, if no matter how we slice it, we will end up divided, then I'm just trying to weigh so that we can get it collectively, get excited about what is coming forward, knowing that there is a board majority that is ready to vote for doing something different. And so given that reality, what can we do that gets us all behind something that we can try to make the best moving forward?
What about if the parameters of the committee is a time frame in which that there's a preliminary report back in which there's more discretion in terms of what the committee discusses. But when it comes to, let's say, October 1st or some date like that, that is brought to the board, and based upon that, then the board then gives a final direction. So if in that time frame there is something that is different than I think the majority of the board thinks is possible, comes back and it is feasible, then the committee continues to work on that option. But if what comes back is essentially a continuation of the discussion that we are having tonight, or that the community has brought to us tonight, and I absolutely respect all the work that the community members did around this issue, that then the board says that option, that the committee has to focus on an option that is essentially the parameters are essentially around like the 3 hours per week school-wide, or a school-wide program that would, that is a school-wide program. That is not a bilingual program.
So just to be, that's the concern. It may not be realistic. So the reason why this timeline is so short, Assistant Superintendent Scuderi, is that we have to get ready for the entering kindergarten class of 2018, and we therefore need to have forms and assignments, and we basically need to have a sense of what's going on by November, December?
November. And even with this compressed timeline, we're proposing that we'll have most of the preliminary details in place and giving ourselves some time to refine. So that in itself presents some challenges.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the clock, and I think that we are really struggling, and I also know that we still have our LCAP to discuss, which is really, really important. So not to minimize this, they're both important, but I think we kind of have to wrap this up.
I'm gonna withdraw my previous motion and just make a motion to adopt the staff recommendation.
Very reluctantly, I will second.
Is there any more discussion?
I'd like to make a friendly amendment. You can do that after this, right? Don't you do that after? So my friendly amendment is just to be clear that within the time frame that's laid out here, that the board will entertain, that the community can have this conversation, and we'll entertain the proposal that comes back in whatever that is, October 25th. And maybe we'll have two proposals. Maybe we should have, if you want to propose two things, then we'll have two things to consider.
Yeah, I don't actually see that as my motion is to adopt the staff recommendation, which includes the timeline that's included in the board packet, so.
But the scope, I think, is what Director Pell is talking about. So the scope would be that the charge of the committee would be to define the heritage program for the entire school. It would not necessarily be to entertain other types of programs.
It would just be focused on the heritage.
Yeah, which again could include a language component, but it's for the whole school. It's a distinctly different type of program.
Okay.
And
let me restate the friendly amendment if I can, which would be so the staff recommendation is for the committee to propose a school-wide heritage program. And if the committee wishes to, in addition to proposing a school-wide heritage program, propose some other proposal, we would entertain it. The board would entertain it. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
But how is that realistic with the staff resources it would take in order to support the committee's work?
I think it may. On the friendly amendment?
we're just clarifying right now. So
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I hear you're asking what's the difference, and I think it might fall within the recommendation, but I just think that being that specific would be helpful for the community because they've come here, they're really concerned about it, and I think offering that as a clarity would be good. I do want to say that we're then not going to postpone beyond that. Like, I think part of it is that this timeline sticks because what we can't have is continuing to come back year after year to have the same discussion.
Right. Well, and so I think, Director Hempel, I think it would be difficult and maybe the timeline may be prohibitively short to come up with another proposal too, but the charge is to bring forward a school-wide heritage program proposal. And if possible, and if the community wants or the committee wants to bring forward another proposal as well that we will entertain in that time frame.
I don't see what we have to lose by offering that to the community.
I mean, that's fine, but I think that there has to be a proposal for a school-wide Spanish heritage program because otherwise there is no program to put in place in 1819. If an alternative proposal is something that the board considers too duplicative or not feasible, and I would not want to put the district staff or the community in the position of trying to move forward with a program that is absolutely not defined and
yeah.
Okay.
That doesn't make sense.
Okay. Well, just to be.
I mean, I hear the concern. I think you're right, Karen. It would be a lot more. The meetings seem to me like they'd be a lot more productive if they were focused. But I'm trying to balance.
So you're saying it just would be focused on the Latino Heritage Program. The discussion and the recommendation from the task force would be essentially mapping it out for the district and rubber stamping that yes, we want the Latino heritage.
That wasn't my recommendation. That's the staff's recommendation. I was saying that we would entertain an additional proposal if the first priority of that committee would be to come up with the Latino Heritage Program because that's the recommendation of staff. And
why are we doing the Latino Heritage Program if we're not accepting the Latinos in the schools? We're a little.
Okay. So I'm gonna.
As long as we stick as long as we stick to the timeline, I do not mind a friendly amendment that would add that essentially the first priority of that committee is to develop a school-wide heritage program, but the committee can also propose an alternative.
Okay. Thank you, Director Hempel.
It has to be in the same time.
Right, okay. Just to make it clean, I'm going to withdraw my motion and make a new motion, which is to adopt the staff recommendation with the one amendment that the committee will be charged primarily with proposing a Latino Heritage Program at Thousand Oaks that's school-wide, but may also bring to the board an additional proposal if they wish, that the board will entertain. Okay, second by Director Hempel. Any more discussion? All right, Ms. Chairs, can we have a roll call vote on that?
Director Leyva Cutler? Director Hemphill?
Yes.
Director Appel?
Yes.
Vice President Daniels?
Yes.
President Appel? Sorry, President Alper?
Yes. You forgot Director Leyva Cutler.
Yeah, no.
She didn't go yet.
Director Leyva Cutler?
No.
Okay, thank you. We're going to now move to item 12.3, which is the approval of local control accountability plan. Director Sadler.
So this is actually the final draft that we're presenting to the board for approval. At the last board meeting, we discussed some of the items that you want us to bring back. And so Dr. Sadler is here just to answer some questions that you might have before finally approving the LCAP plan. Thank you.
The final motion.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't have a presentation for tonight, but I'm here to answer any follow-up questions on the final LCAP.
Thank you, Dr. Sadler. Director, Vice President Daniels?
Sure. So just to be specific, we discussed this at the last board meeting. So I'm looking on page 59 of 153. The pagination changes a little bit, but this is goal 1, and this is the metrics. So metric letter G, which is the SBA, which says will increase from the previous year. Letter H, which says shall increase from the previous year. Letter, what I believe to be I, will increase from the previous year. So these are 3 metrics that all relate to SBA, 3rd grade ELA, 8th grade math, and 11th grade. Both that rather than it say a generic will increase from the previous year, say something to the effect, and I'm happy to be more specific, that it will increase by 5 percentage point, for student groups below the district average. So that we would be very intentional about closing the gap and raising those scores. So that would be one requested change. I have at least one more, but I'm curious to know if there's support for that change before making the second one. Sure. So right now, the metric, the expected annual measurable outcome for those 3 measurements, all related to the average, or set a target for all students and then say these student groups shall increase by a certain percentage point each year. I'm good either way if staff has a preference, but I feel strongly that we should be as specific as possible so that it's simply not just an increase, because a 0.1% increase is an increase, not something we should be proud of personally. And in particular, it doesn't say that we're increasing it for our most at-risk student groups. It simply says we're increasing our overall district average. And that's not something that I think we talked about this last time. I don't need to repeat it.
Yeah, I support that change. I don't know. I think I'd be curious to know for the first year 5% is realistic. I know in some of I know that Karen mentioned some of the data we saw this week was not encouraging, but there was some that was very encouraging. And so I don't know. You think 5% is too high?
It's way too high, and I understand what Director Daniels is saying. You want to have a goal. But and I actually reviewed the scores as well, and 5% is pretty unreal. It's not unrealistic. It's very lofty for us to attain.
Is there 2, 3%, 2.5?
You can do 2% or more than
what
that.
What did you say?
Or more.
2% or more?
I would do 2%, and that's still going to be a challenge. But I think we have to keep at least that 2%.
And that's only for student groups that are below the district average.
District average,
Yeah.
which is all of our target groups.
Yeah.
Can I just weigh in a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
You gotta
Karen.
talk louder.
Okay, I think it's, can you hear me now?
No, louder. Yell.
Yes, hello?
Yes, better.
Okay. I think part of the issue that I've had with the way that we're setting our goals is that it's not 5%, it's 5 percentile points. So for example,
Karen, hold on one second. If I could ask people, if you have conversations, if you could take them outside, because we're having trouble hearing Director Hemphill. Thank you. Go ahead, Karen.
so one of the problems that I've had with our data, or our goals, is that we really aren't talking when we say 5%. We're not really talking about a 5% increase, we're talking about a 5 percentile increase. So for example, just to make it easy, if you're talking about being at 10% and you say I want 5%, that's not 15%, that's really a 50% increase. So I think that when we talk about it, underestimate what we need to do to reach a goal. And so I think that that's what we need to think about, is if 5% means really a 30% increase, I'm not saying that that shouldn't be the goal we set, but we need to know that that's what you're saying.
Yep. So I agree with you. We need to be specific. I'm talking about percentage point increases. And just to be clear, I'm happy to go with a 2% or 3%, but I just want to reiterate that let's just take third grade ELA SBAC scores. Our district-wide average is 62%. Our EL percentage is 26%. Our African American is 22%. So that means, let's just take African Americans, that means if we increase 2 percentage points a year and all does not change, that means it would take us 20 years to close that gap. So I want to make sure that we hit our targets, but I want to be clear that we have a huge gap to close and that we need to do more than 2%. I'm happy to set it at 2% for purposes of LCAP, but if we just do 2% every year, that is not enough.
I'm not arguing about the crisis, so to speak. What
Oh no, I understand, Dr. Hemphill. I wasn't.
It's effort. Are we putting the kind of money in to get that kind of result? I mean, if we want to increase what's really a 30% better score than we have now, have we in the LCAP the resources to do that? Or is it just putting a goal on paper that's impossible to meet because we haven't significantly changed the resources that we're putting in?
So it sounds like though that that a majority of the board is comfortable with making that change to the 3 SBAC metrics, letter G, H, and I. A majority of the board.
Yeah, we don't have to rehash the same conversation.
Okay. Going on to letter J, where it says the overall percentage of students who have passed an AP exam pass with a 3 or higher will increase annually by 2%. Again, I appreciate the specifics in this one, but it doesn't address gap closure, right? So this means that if we all go up 2%, you're still going to maintain a fairly large gap. So I would request that staff modify that to say the percentage of students sort of the below district-wide average. So we'll use the 2%, but the goal would be for those student groups that are below the district-wide average, which in this case is only African American students, EL students, and unduplicated students, because the district-wide average is 78%. Sorry.
No, it's just the language is in number in K, more students in each significant subgroup.
Below the district-wide average, yes. I think that if you have so let's just take, for example, J, which is our AP passage rates. Latino students have an 83% passage, 3+ or more, whereas district-wide average is 78%. So if that data is correct, which I believe it is, then that actually would not be a student group that is below the district-wide average. if I'm assuming I'm reading this right. So we wouldn't need to call out in the metric. We would simply say for those student groups below the district-wide average, they would go by 2%. Dr. Sadler, am I understanding that right? Okay. So any concerns about doing that?
No.
Okay. I feel like I had one more thing, but I can't find it now, so maybe somebody else can talk, and then I can jump back in.
Director Levicolor.
No, not at this time. I left my notes at home, sadly.
Okay. Director Hempel, is there anything else you wanted to say or ask?
Yeah, I'll just repeat myself in a way, is that I am very concerned about our slow progress toward meeting to bridging our achievement gap or opportunity gap. But I don't think just changing the goals are going to get us there, because if we don't do anything different, how do we expect to reach higher goals when we're not meeting some of the goals that we've already set that are lower?
Well, we are addressing math. I think we're putting in the extra support sections at the middle schools and at the high school. And our task right now is what that instructional model will look like, as well as the intervention curriculum.
But that's based on what was in the LCAP as the TAC recommended. It's not based upon the changes to the way of measuring success, so to speak, that some of the board members are suggesting now.
Go ahead.
Josh, maybe you know this answer in terms of when the new testing comes out for the English language learners, how does that impact this, the LCAP and the data?
So the reclassification will be calculated based on administration of a test twice a year. So the test will be given in the fall and then in the spring, and that will identify the students that are being reclassified. So next year we will not provide a dual administration of one test. So it won't happen until the 18-19 year. So we won't see a change in the outcome for reclassification for next school year, but 2 years out. And we will need to change the metric for the second year of the LCAP.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
But will it show up here in terms of, what the
Yes,
scores
this time
for
next
students
year,
here?
yes, we
It'll show
will
up
make a
as-
change, yes.
Okay, any other comments, questions? No?
I think I
Did you remember it?
Just a couple of quick things. So for those of you who are interested in delving more into this document, in addition to the plan summary, I would encourage you to look at pages 114, 115, 116, and 117, as well as the table on page 121, 122, 123, all the way through 126. It gives, I think, a little bit more specificity and a little more summary form around sort of what it is that we are doing to try to address the needs of our most at-risk students. And I guess I have just a budgetary question for Deputy Superintendent. Do we have a sense of how much is in our, or approximately how much will be in our supplemental reserve once we close the books, give or take? Do we know about what that might be?
I think we will have $1 million for LCAP by the time we close the books.
So what that means is that we've set aside this reserve to allow us to cushion any budget cuts from the state. I believe our policy says that it will go up to $1 million, and so that means we're capped out at our reserve. So that opens up a couple of possibilities. One, we have a pretty strong cushion if there were to be cuts to support these programs. And two, it means that any unspent funds, we need to think about how we spend those. Because if we don't spend them, what ends up happening is they basically roll into the general fund without any sort of tagged dollars, because they're not restricted. And so we at some point, again, not now, but as we think about next year, thinking about sort of one-time expenditures that would be appropriate to spend those funds on moving forward is something that I think we should consider. And then lastly, again, just, there are a lot of LCAPs. In fact, there are about 2,200 LCAPs across the state. And, while each LCAP is unique in its own right, I feel like we should be very proud of the work that we do around this document. A number of districts look to us for how to track the funding, how to be transparent, how to engage our community, how to explain what we're doing. And while, I think we all at some point could likely find ways to improve even further, I think this is something that we should be proud of. So if there's no other comments, I will move to adopt the 17-18 LCAP.
So I'll second that motion. I also wanted to say that there's, I also am really proud of the LCAP that we've put together, and also how we continue to look at it and evaluate it each year and build on the things that are working and be willing to look at the things that aren't. I share Karen's concerns about the math, and so I think in this upcoming year, let's see if we see a shift. But I think now, after 2 years of Math 1, we want to learn. We want to make those shifts early on. We invested a lot into that program and into trying to address differentiation in the Math 1 program. And so, if whatever we're trying, I know it's not for lack of trying. So if it's not working, I think, continuing to evaluate that with our, our qualified math leaders at Berkeley High would be great. And I just wanted to also echo Director Daniels' comments about transparency. There's a lot of conversation right now in Sacramento about the need for transparency in tracking the dollars, each dollar to a target student, to a student that needs our resources, and feel like we're doing that really well. And I'm just really proud of that, because I think that's what these dollars are supposed to be for, and I think we're all being very conscientious about making sure that probably more than most districts, that the dollars that are supplemental dollars are going to targeted students. So, thank you.
Did you second the motion?
I did.
Okay. Second by Director Appel.
Director Leila Cutler?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Director Hemphill?
Yes.
Director Appel?
Yes.
Vice President Daniels?
Yep.
President Alper?
Yes, and thank you, Dr. Sadler, for all your work.
Have a good summer.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 12.4, the approval of the adopted budget. Do you have a presentation?
I'm stepping out for a minute. I will tell you when I come back.
Okay.
Okay. Are there significant changes from the last version that we saw? Okay.
Probably just one slide with a little bit more information.
Well, I feel prepared to move that we adopt the budget. Does anybody need to see the presentation?
No, but I have some comments about we don't have to see the presentation, but comments budget-wise that I'd like to make.
Okay.
Is that okay with you if we dispense with the presentation?
Well, there's a motion, so I don't know if anyone wants to second the...
You sure? Director Appel, if you would like to make a motion, I'll second it.
I did make the motion.
I will second.
Okay, motion by Director Appel, second by Vice President Daniels. Director Hemphill stepped out for a minute.
So,
Josh.
So let me just pull up this item. So earlier in this meeting, we approved the tentative agreement with the BFT. We discussed at an earlier board meeting the need to make some cuts, and I think it would be appropriate at this time to not necessarily start that discussion, because that's a longer discussion, but to start a discussion around the process by which we would make those cuts. And so my understanding, but I want to be corrected by staff, is that the estimate for the ongoing cuts that we would need to make prior to adopting our budget a year from now is $1.5 million. And that there is a process that involves the Superintendent's Budget Advisory Committee, or SBAC, that will start meeting in the fall, that will engage in a robust process around how to get there. So I would like to request on behalf of the board that when the superintendent brings back recommendations on those cuts, that it include at least $1.5 million in ongoing cuts and an additional $300,000 in ongoing cuts that staff is not recommending, but that the board may consider as alternatives to some portion of the $1.5 million cuts. So that would, so while the board would not be limited to those cuts, it would allow us and our community to weigh in a public way how to address the financial needs of our district. But that it would be explicit that from the SBAC that would be their eventual goal, that their eventual recommendation would be, here are $1.5 million in cuts that we think the board should, or the superintendent should bring to the board, and here is sort of an additional $300,000 that while we don't recommend, we considered and think that, you know, should be part of the discussion as well.
Excuse me, I'm back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that clear in terms of what the request would be?
I think we've already moved in that direction.
And I think to make it even more specific, I think what we've talked about with the superintendent, but just to see if we're all on the same page, is that we'll come back with an actual action item in August where the board actually provides explicit direction along the lines of what you just suggested.
Yes, again, not to take action on the cuts, but to provide clarity to the superintendent and therefore to the SBAC about what the request of their discussions would be. So just to codify this basic idea so that it's clear that the board is asking, this isn't coming from just staff. This is the board saying to staff, these are the size of the cuts that we feel we need to make. And therefore, you can't come back with any less.
So we will.
Any concerns if we bring that item back by board members? Okay, that means just to be clear, because even though folks have left and nobody's watching anymore, that and the thousands who always watch, that the type of cuts we're talking about may be similar to the difficult decision we had to make today with respect to Thousand Oaks. That these are, that to get to 1.5 million with an additional $300,000 as alternative options, we're talking about meaningful cuts that will have an impact. Now, to be fair, we have made other decisions that we think will on net benefit the district. So additional prep time and many other decisions we've made as a board. Yeah. But it also means that those things don't exist in silos and that they do have other, they're balanced out, not balanced out, but they are, they therefore will be requiring us to make these other cuts. So I know just to sort of begin to get that message out there that next year, the next school year, will be a challenging school year around how we address how to, you know, making our budget balanced. So just to start that message so that we're all, you know, begin to be aware and begin to be thoughtful about how to approach it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Vice President Daniels, and we will bring an action item in August to do exactly that. All right, is there any other comments or questions? We have a motion already. Oh, go ahead.
No, I would just invite this conversation to be sent, and the materials be sent to the advisory committee, the budget advisory committee. So right now, send it now so that they have it and they know what's coming.
Yeah, my understanding is they're not meeting again until
September 26th.
And I will say that to some extent, I think that group is actually ahead of the board as far as having a lot of information about all the cuts that we've considered in the last, you know, basically 6 years, and cuts that we made, cuts that we didn't make, things that we consider currently. So we're very well, so I totally concur, and I think that we've been, the superintendent and deputy superintendent have really helped, I think, prepare for that. But that being said, I don't think that body is preparing for a $1.5 million cut. Yeah, that's going to be new news to them.
That is
Well,
correct.
And but that's the point of putting it as an actual action item in August before that meeting, so we'll be able to provide specific, explicit direction. That's, okay. All right, can we have a roll call vote then on the budget?
Director Leva Cutler?
Yes.
Director Hemphill?
Yes.
Director Appel?
Yep.
Vice President Daniels?
Yeah.
President Alper?
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 12.6. Is there a
Thank you.
motion? Sorry?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pauline. Sorry. This is the approval of the suicide prevention policy.
Comments on this.
You do.
I do, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I think I considered pulling this item because I think the suicide prevention policy is great and it's very lofty. And I just have to comment that the amount of mental health services and supports that are anticipated in the policy are not reflected in our schools. And so I'm concerned, one of the reasons why I'm not pulling it, but I'm gonna make the motion to approve it, is because I'm hoping that this will be an impetus for us to find ways to invest in more mental health care services, even in light of, because I think we can probably help fund them through outside dollars. So I am going to approve it, but I have to say that what this policy pointed out to me, because it's based on some of the model policies, is that is even more how much we need mental health services in our schools that we don't currently offer. And and that it can result in really serious repercussions for our students. That being said, I'm happy to move the item.
Will this have an AR also?
There's not an AR. No, this was based on, this was done on a pretty quick timeline because the state just came up with the model policy very recently. But no, there's not an AR, although part of what's in the board policy that we're discussing tonight is what you might expect to see more in an AR. It has very specific best practices.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's probably not ideal, but at least it's all in there.
Well, it's just, as always, how this is communicated out to our staff. That's really important. The communication to our new principals, counselors, people who have access to our students at all times.
And the policy, as I think you said, Director Appel, it has sort of very robust language around that training that we will, I think, need to step up our game to do, but that will be the Office of Director of Student Services or Student Services to do that.
Well, I also think it's how do we partner with Alameda County and also with the City of Berkeley Mental Health Services, and making sure that they know, we'd like to figure out how we can partner with them also.
Yeah.
So, 1 minute. All right, so under our policy, in order to approve a policy on first reading, we need to, by a 2/3 vote, waive the need for a second reading. So, although I think you moved the policy, do you want to? Can we first have a motion to waive the second reading?
So I move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
I heard Director Appel. Second by Director Appel. Can we do a quick roll call vote on the waiving the second reading?
Director Leva Cutler?
Yes.
Director Hemphill?
Yes.
Director Appel? Yes. Vice President Daniels?
Yep.
President Alper?
Yes. All right, now, do you want to make a motion, Director Appel?
Yeah,
on the
I'll
policy?
move to adopt the policy.
Second.
Second by Vice President Daniels. Can we have a roll call vote on that one?
Director Leva Cutler?
Yes.
Director Hemphill?
Yes.
Director Appel?
Yes.
Vice President Daniels?
Yep.
President Alper?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to item 12.7. These are these are very minor modifications to our sexual harassment policy, basically to change the name of the Title IX coordinator. We also have to waive the second reading for this one. So I'm going to move to waive the second reading on these two policies.
Second.
Second by Vice President Daniels. Can we do a roll call vote on that?
Director Leyva Cutler?
Yes.
Director Hemphill?
Yes.
Director Appel?
Yes.
Vice President Daniels?
Yep.
President Alper?
Yes. Now I'll move those policies.
Yeah.
Second.
Second by Vice President Daniels.
Director Leyva Cutler?
Yes.
Director Hemphill?
Yes.
Director Appel?
Yes.
Vice President Daniels?
Yep.
President Alper?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Now, our last action item, Director White, is the item, what was item 11.10, but it's actually now 12.8. This is the approval of contracts and purchase orders for service contracts. And the reason I pulled this because I wanted to discuss, it's 11.10. I wanted to discuss and get a little more information from staff about number 5 on the list, which is the consulting services with the UC Berkeley Center for Cities and Schools for the Facilities Department. So can you maybe provide a little more
Certainly.
clarification about that? Thank you for coming.
No problem at all. First, we apologize about the ambiguity of the item and its wording. There was a lack of specificity in terms of the details. And what was actually missing is that the $80,000 is a not to exceed amount. We wanted to make sure that we got 2 items before the board represented by this particular agenda item. The 2 items that it intends to cover are, one, the direction of the board to look into an analysis on employee housing. And so we wanted to engage with the Center for Cities and Schools through UC Berkeley to conduct a comprehensive survey analysis around our employees' need for teacher housing. We believe that that will inform our direction in terms of recommendations that we bring back to the board as directed by the board to come back in the month of August and report back on the teacher housing options and possibilities. The housing survey would engage our employees and make a determination about some critical fact points of where they live, how they get to work, possible opportunities for reduction in carbon footprint, what type of unit would be most incentivized for them to make a selection to choose employee housing and the like. And so it would inform what we actually construct to and how we accommodate the needs of our staff. The second item that is under the $80,000 not to exceed is an analysis around the implementation of gender-inclusive facilities, and, particularly in our restrooms, locker rooms, gymnasiums. As you know, we've completed the first phase of making sure facilities are available for our gender-inclusive students, which was the creation and identification of single-stall restrooms. And so considering the complexity of it, an analysis around that to help guide our decision-making is the second portion of the Center for City Schools scope of work.
Do you have any update on whether the not to exceed amount can be
Certainly.
lowered?
What we wanted to do today, considering the items were a bit ambiguous, is to go forward with just that one scope with housing and to amend on the floor the cost to not to exceed $30,000 for the housing analysis. And we hope to bring back to you the one for gender-inclusive facilities analysis in August, when we can get a little bit more detail in terms of specific pricing.
Okay. Thank you. I'll move to approve what was item 11.10 with the amendment that Director White just made.
I'll second.
Second from Director Daniels.
Director Leyva Cutler?
Yes.
Director Hemphill?
Yes.
Director Appel?
No.
Vice President Daniels?
Yep.
President Alper?
Yes. Thank you. So you will
Thank
bring,
you.
and you'll bring that back to us then in August for the gender-neutral bathrooms?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh,
Yeah,
President Alpert,
go ahead.
it's 1:30 in the morning in Washington, D.C. So I'm going to flat out since all the thing that's left is discussion items. And I will have an opportunity, if I so wish, to weigh in when it comes back as an action item.
That's correct.
Well, we will vote on it, and obviously the board can send it back if they want, but this discussion item is the opportunity for the board to provide substantive feedback, so that if this opportunity is not taken, in an ideal world, it would not need to go back when it comes back for action. So just to put
At
that out there.
1:30 in the morning, my ability to do substantive content is a little lacking.
I understand, Dr. Hempel. This is our practice.
Is there anything, before you go, because I know it's so late there, Karen, is there anything you want to say about this policy? It is a brief, I mean, it's short. So before you go, if there's any comments you want to make, we'd be happy to hear them.
Okay. Well, I think this is something that, is not going to be controversial, but I do believe that it's going to be, wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think it is going to be important to make sure that parents are interviewed, are notified as soon as possible regarding any interviews that do take place. And I also think that it's important for any student who wishes to have an adult in the room. It may not be a parent or guardian, because I know that some of these interviews are timely, and a parent or guardian may not be able to come to the school, within the time frame that the reason for the interview is in terms of timeliness, but that, that there could be a counselor or a teacher or another adult that the student can have with them. And I also believe that there should be a clear protocol set by the superintendent in terms of the parameters of any questions that are asked. I do believe that in the past that the fact finding, so to speak, has really been a lot broader than necessary for the specifics of the reason for the interview. And so I think that it's got to be clear that the superintendent sets the parameters for those discussions. And if upon those interviews the council believes there is reasons to broaden the questions that are being asked, that they first check with the superintendent before they do so. And I guess that's kind of the, and I would say that the board also should be notified that student interviews will be occurring before they occur. And if necessary, then if the board feels that they need to weigh in before they occur, that there could be, if need be, a emergency closed session. So I can't see that possibility. I actually think that we have to trust our superintendent to set the parameters and then hold him accountable, or her, in the future. Could be a her.
Well, we did have, in a previous version of this policy, we did have a provision that allowed for a closed session of the board to sort of override this policy, but for the reason that you're saying, Karen, we changed it to authorizing the board president to allow district council to interview the student prior to parental notification. So it puts some responsibility on the elected official, but doesn't get in the way of the investigation that would be required if we had to have a board meeting. So that was the reason.
The thing is that to me it's either a staff decision or a board decision. I don't really. I don't think that this is something that should be put on the shoulders of one elected official.
Okay.
But that's just my perspective.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that specifically, because that, and sort of go and see where where the rest of the board is on, this is the last paragraph, or the second to last paragraph of the policy, that does provide for an exception, but only, an exception meaning the district lawyer, and I should just back up 1 second and say that I want to thank Director Leva Cutler. You were the one who suggested that the policy committee take up a policy along these lines, and the purpose is to ensure that parents are notified when district lawyers, not administrators, but district lawyers are interviewing students. How does the rest of the board feel about either, as I understand Director Hempel to be suggesting, leaving it to the superintendent to make the decision that there's an irreparable harm that would be caused by informing the parent, and therefore allowing the district lawyer to interview the student without notifying the parent, or, as we've written it, putting that on the shoulders of the board president?
Well, I'm not saying just the superintendent, I'm saying it could be of the full board.
I think it's almost practically unreasonable to try to gather everybody together, even on the phone, for some immediate decision to be made when the clock is ticking on such cases. So that's what I think is really difficult. I think that's what we have a superintendent to make a decision, and legal counsel to be able to make the decision, and that they confer with the board president. I would be fine with that, but I think it would be in a moment's time to be able to gather everybody together.
So would you prefer?
I think. Oh.
Well,
I understand that, and my concern is looking to the future, having been on a board that was quite divided, and that to date the board has had a tradition of rotating the president. And I have been on the board when there's been a president that I did not feel was carrying out the wishes of a majority of the board.
I guess I'm concerned. I totally hear you, Karen, and I appreciate your forward-thinking perspective. I do think, though, just pragmatically thinking about these situations as they come up, that getting the entire board to sign off on it is just, it's just not pragmatic. I think I would make a suggestion that, we could have 2 board members. I think I'm fine with just the president. The only thing I would suggest is saying if the president is not available, then the vice president, just because you can't always reach the president of the board either, and then you can reach the vice president. I hear your concern, Karen, and I just think, though, at some point it's the, it's kind of like the outcome of democracy or something.
Okay.
I had another comment, though, about the policy.
I'm only one board member.
Yeah, let me just kind of get a roll call on this one. So I think that's a reasonable, all the suggestions are reasonable, but I agree with Director Appel's to add the vice president if the president's unavailable, but otherwise I think that we've struck the right balance. How do you two feel? Are you okay with that? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Director Appel.
No.
Okay, got it, Karen.
Because I can see some of the recent issues that we have had, and for example, there have been some racial undertones that I might be very uncomfortable not being in the loop about those kinds of decisions about who is interviewed and how they're interviewed and when parents are notified.
Okay.
Okay. I understand that balance. I guess I know this is by district council, and this is just an inquiry for the policy committee, because I think you know our policies better than I do. So, and I understand why we wrote this particular policy. I have a question about questioning by police on campus. Do we have a separate policy that specifically speaks to parent notification when police want to interview our students, that they, pulling them from school to do that?
We do not. We have a draft policy.
Because I guess I would just wonder if we might want to include that here. Or you want to do it as part of the police, the whole police interaction?
Yeah, because
is it part of a larger interaction around police? Okay.
Yeah, and I totally appreciate the question.
I have a comment in terms of this policy refers to the student administrator or a counselor. Can the student pick the person that they want to be their advocate, or we as a district or the administrator would be assigning the person? Can the student have a voice in who they want as their advocate?
So we discussed that to some extent. I think that the conclusion we reached was if the student's parent or guardian wants to be there and the student, then they can do that. If the parent or guardian says, I'm okay with the questioning happening, or after many reasonable attempts, the parent or guardian is not reached, we felt that it was important that an administrator be there, but that it would be too unwieldy to allow the student to require a particular administrator who is not actually there as their advocate. That isn't really how we saw it. We saw it as the parent being there because the parent should have has a right to be there if their kid is being interviewed by a lawyer in almost every circumstance. An administrator, almost more so for there to be a witness to a third party to the interaction, but not necessarily as an advocate of the student.
Well,
I have the same concern that there's sometimes racial implications.
That's what I was.
And if the student and the administrator that shows up, no shade for any current administrators, may not be an administrator that is sensitive to those racial implications and may or may not step in when because of those implications being something that the student's being subjected to that a parent or guardian would object to.
Thank you. That's exactly what my thinking was in terms of the student, because the feeling that I have is just being as a student and having all these adults, questioning me, and just that student having and the advocate having a role and knowing what essentially their role is to be the witness, not to intervene, but to be there by the side of the student. That's mostly it.
So your suggestion is that the student, if a parent or guardian is not available, that the student have the ability to choose a district employee, that teacher,
counselor.
Well, I'm more concerned about how this works out in practice. So how would we have a third grader, for example, or a first grader pick the adult that they would want in the room with them? I think that's a lot. I understand the concern about having the right administrator, but again, to President Alpert's point, they're not there as an advocate of the student. That's not why they would be there. They're there because we believe that having a second adult in the room when being questioned by an attorney is good practice, but not because the student needs protection from the lawyer.
But not all witnesses see the same thing.
No, I don't disagree with that, but I think the I guess I'm not clear on what a reasonable, implementable alternative would be, given the wide variety of students who would potentially be interviewed by a lawyer if it came to pass. And allowing a first grader to choose seems to me to be opening up a whole nother challenge. So I think it continues to be an issue.
Where are you? No, where are you on this issue? I mean, in almost, the reason I share I guess, Josh's concern is in almost every instance where the student is really concerned about being there alone with the lawyer, the parent or guardian will be able to be there.
I guess, because I was kind of going back and forth. I think that, you could put in a really, like a complex tiered system, kind of like they do with kids testifying in court around custody. Like if you get to a certain age, you have you're competent to make that decision. But that just seems really complex for this. So I think I would just go with, I think I would just go with an administrator. But I don't know if we can also, as kind of but you know, there's also certain instances where where students do have their like safe person, and we're trying to create this personalization in the high school where we have, where we have people in these houses where kids will have these increase the personalization and connections with adults. So if we're going to do that, it does also make sense, particularly at the secondary level, to allow students to choose, to try to choose the adults. So I think that's kind of what you're getting at. Like, if
that's perhaps what you can do is just in terms of the secondary level.
Well, how about something like where feasible, the student shall
can identify an alternate adult to be present.
Yeah,
or
where the
USD employee or something. Yeah.
Where the parent or guardian is not available, when feasible, the student shall be able to identify another adult.
BUSD.
I mean,
another BUSD employee.
Is it going to be in writing? Like, how will it be communicated? What if the student changes their mind? What if the employee isn't available? I just think it's much simpler, because again, I think if the student picks the administrator, then they're going to, I think, understandably believe that administrator is there sort of on their behalf, and that's not the case. It's not.
They're just there as a witness.
They're there, so we don't have a lawyer and interviewing a student without anybody else present. It's it is for the district, not for the student.
For the student. Okay.
And if the parent's there, well, then we satisfy both, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
maybe. I mean, not necessarily.
True. I think that it just. I mean, I don't disagree with the motivation, but I just think practically it creates a lot more problems, and this I think will keep it much more simple.
Yeah, because you know that there are also going to be cases where we're calling the parents, and that's not, it's not going to be on the student's behalf. Like, the students aren't necessarily, they're not going to want their parents called every time they're getting, interviewed by a lawyer, because that's not necessarily mean that, So I understand. Given that rationalization, I'm fine with it as it is. Can you live with it, Beatrice?
I'm having experienced this with a relative, and her being interviewed by police, by, first of all, not being notified until already she was taken to the police department. That experience always comes back to me, and that's one of the reasons this is really important, because I've experienced it and I've heard other families in the past experience it. But a young person not having an advocate next to them, I mean, obviously this policy to protect the district. It's, and trying as much as possible to also ensure that our students have somebody there, but that's a witness. It just feels like there's a part that's not protecting the student and the students, as someone being there for them.
I mean, just to be clear, I mean, I don't disagree with what Vice President Daniels said, but I don't see this policy as only being about protecting the district. The impetus for this policy was to protect students and parents from students being interviewed by district lawyers without the parents finding out, knowing about it ahead of time. To me, that's the main purpose of the policy.
And consenting. I thought that part of it was also.
Yeah, and consenting that as a parent, I don't want my kid, I don't expect my kid to go off to school and be interviewed by a lawyer for the district without me knowing about it and being there or being able to stop it. If the parent is unavailable or doesn't care, then there's a part of the policy that requires an administrator there as a witness, which is a protection for both the student and the district, I think.
I think we should be clear that I think protection may be too strong a word. I think we believe the policy of this district we're proposing is that parents have a right to be notified. But we have the right to interview students, to investigate, to protect, frankly, the safety of the students. We believe in doing that, we want to notify parents. Having an administrator present is not for the benefit of the student. Because if it is, then we have to think about, well, what are the rules and regulations around the behavior of that administrator? Like, you know, do they say something to protect this? I mean, there's all sorts of implications that if that administrator is there for the student, then there's expectations around the behavior of that administrator that I do not think we want to impose without any sort of training, I mean, it just gets super complicated.
Yep.
They're there so that we don't have a lawyer and a student by themselves in a room for the district's benefit, not for the student's benefit. And I think, therefore, allowing the student to pick undermines that approach.
Well, I think
and
that
I'm saying that a student who, particularly is of color, who is in a room with nothing, and I will say this, white authoritarian figures, and there's no one there that is at least seeing what is being, or seeing body gestures, hearing tone and intent, can sometimes be influenced or intimidated or made to, and that is my concern. And so while I understand that this person is not an advocate, but the fact that there is someone in the room who is witnessing the exchange that the student believes would give a fair and objective report of what was said and how it was said is important.
Director Bell, you were going to... Well,
I guess I totally hear that, and I'm also I don't know. I don't know how we balance this because I don't know how we balance these two. I don't know how we balance these two things because it sounds like we're talking about two very different interests, and that is a really important reality. And also, like, as the grown-ups in the school, for the kid to say, I don't know, I just am concerned about putting that decision-making in the hands of students. So I think what Beatrice was getting at, which is, I was kind of coming from this idea, like, look, they're going to get interviewed by this attorney, they're a witness. Like, a lot of those cases, they were just witnesses in a case that really didn't have anything to do with them personally, and it was scary for them. So for that, in that case, for them to have somebody there that they feel they can trust, I think takes the edge off of that. But that's really different from what Josh is talking about. So now I'm confused about exactly what we're trying to get to here.
I think the way in which we address Director Hempel's concerns is through the training of our staff. I don't think we address it by requiring certain people to be in the room or giving it a choice. I think in a perfect world we might be able to do that, but I just think that is logistically challenging. So I mean, it's just a discussion item. But I do think
I agree. That's the point, the training of our staff. But if you see the counsel who's going to be interviewing is white, the accuser is white, and the students and the principal is white, and then that's like, do our administrators know to be aware?
That they don't feel at home with. I mean, there are some white people who could be, understand what's happening in a way that a person of color would, but not every white administrator or white person is going to be that person.
I could accept this if we were to ensure that there was training and some awareness in terms of how this happens, and the people would be much more just aware of who is in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I think the alternative, because if we let the kids decide who the adults are, then we're going to have to train every single adult to be able to do this, because you have to know how to behave when you're in a room with an attorney, questioning a kid in order to not impede whatever the investigation that's going on. Let's assume if we're allowing an attorney to be in a room with a kid, we think that there's some kind of valid investigation that needs to happen, and we need to make sure that whoever the adult is supporting that. And so it's, I do agree that just allowing any adult, it's hard for me to see how we could train everybody, in that it would be worth the cost to do that.
But we could train the administrators?
If we just train the administrators and then keep the policy, but then just include that somehow in the
All right,
But I don't think that's good. I mean, you can't, I mean, that goes to our bigger training of training our teachers to feel, I mean, training our administrators to be safe places for our kids.
So, I mean, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I do think we do train our staff, including our administrators, regarding cultural competency. And if we're saying that we want to invest additional resources in training them specifically around what to do when students are interviewed by lawyers, that seems to me to be a very specific, like, training in an instance that is unlikely to occur given the existence of this policy to begin with. So I think that I think if there's a level of discomfort with this policy, we could either discuss it again at a subsequent board meeting, we could bring it back to the committee to discussion, but I don't think that we are going to come up with a I mean, if the concern is that our staff, our administrators, need better training around interviewing students, then that is, I think, an important but separate issue than our policy around having students interviewed by district council. And so I guess I would urge us to make that a separate issue that we could bring back to the board, not as a policy, or ask staff to come, to provide us more information about what training does exist so we could be clear. But I think that as a policy, I'm not sure, I haven't heard a different approach that I think is logistically feasible than the one that is laid out in this policy.
So I would support the policy as it is, and with us coming back to it and seeing, is anything different? Is anything happened in this process? To keeping an eye on how this does get implemented, and not just approve a policy, send it out to her, but really relook at did this work for our students? Did it work for our administrators?
How about if we, because this happens very rarely, we should acknowledge.
Yeah.
What if we include in the policy a requirement that there be a report to the board annually on each of these interactions, and a sort of a qualitative report of how it went, with any suggestions for revision of the policy, something like that?
So if you're asking us how it went, who would we be asking? The administrators?
The administrators.
Well, I think the administrators, the student. I mean, this happens pretty rarely, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, I was thinking about that this happens, I mean, it does not happen
once a year, maybe.
I think, yeah, maybe more than that. Yeah.
Someone want to make a motion to extend the meeting to 11:15? Yeah.
I think that we're also all really tired, so I was going to suggest that maybe you can take it back to committee, and maybe we will bring it back again we can bring it back for action and then have discussion on the action and then put it over. There's a lot of options.
That's true.
So.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll
bring it back.
We'll bring it back to our committee.
Yeah. What's going to be different?
Or you're saying bring it back to the board?
Well, I think you're hearing what they hear. I know that you two don't. I'm hearing that you don't agree, but I think you're hearing from all of us three other members of the board.
The women.
I was going to say,
yeah, that's fine. But I think
that there's another concern that we have about the interview about when kids are interviewed by attorneys, and so if you could maybe whenever you guys meet at 4:30 in the afternoon instead of 11 o'clock at night, if you could think about that.
But I think we would need direction at what types of substantive changes. Because I understand that there's a majority that's concerned about this. That's fine, but without direction on how to change it, I'm not sure that we could do a sufficient job to respond to the majority of the board's concerns. So my suggestion would be to bring it back as a board for discussion even at the next board meeting, and that the board contemplate what would they want to see differently, so that we can do our best as a policy committee to sort of craft that into language. But I haven't heard yet any majority coalesce around a substantive change. And without that, I don't think that a board referral would be, a board policy referral would be productive at this time.
Well, let's do that. We can bring it back for, it's only for discussion here, we can bring it back for another discussion. I would like to see this policy implemented because I think it's an improvement over the status quo, so I don't want to delay it for too long, but we'll bring it back in August, right?
So I have a question.
I need a motion.
Wait, I move to extend the meeting to 11:15.
Is there?
I'll second.
Second by Director Leva. We need to do quick.
Director Leva-Color?
Yes.
Director Hemphill?
Yes.
Director Appel? Yes. Vice President Daniels?
Yep.
And President Evans?
Yes. Okay, go ahead. Who's talking? All right, can we move on? Oh, no.
No, Karen was saying something.
I'm sorry, Karen?
How much parent input has there been on this, particularly parents of color?
I can't, we've discussed this in 2 policy committee meetings. I can't remember.
I mean, we don't, I mean, I think that the short answer is probably none. Yeah, she presented a parent color.
Yeah. Okay, all right. We will bring it back for discussion. Is there extended public comment? Okay, how many, can you just raise your hand if you'd like to give extended public comment? Okay.
I'm guessing all 5 of them
all
if
5
they
of you?
stayed until 11 o'clock, probably.
Why don't you just line
we're
up
cute.
and go one at a time? There's 5 of you, so you can have.
I said that we're cute. I didn't do it. Okay, well, I was just making a joke. Thanks.
So 2 minutes each, and you can just go one by one.
So we're still here, and it's just concerning that at the end of the session, the feelings are that we feel for Beatriz because of these are her kids, that this has been a program she's loved and nurtured. But really, I ask you all, why is Beatriz the only one concerned about these kids? It's really sad to me that we have a panel of board members and that all these Latino Spanish-speaking kids have become Beatriz's responsibility. I thought they were all of your responsibility. And it's just sad. I work for you, I'm a teacher here, and I'm just glad that I'm teaching students and that you all maybe are not in the classroom. Because these kids should be everybody's concern. And a Latino Heritage program does not meet their concerns or needs. And I would wish that you all saw that and felt that. And that's just a reality that we continue to face. And it's right here in Berkeley. And I thank you, Beatriz, for standing up and for saying what you've said and for asking us to move forward with something that works. And then if we need to change it or fix things or change the name or re-look at the demographics, that we would do that work. But we ended with just removing it. And we thank you, Beatriz, and it's just sad to be alone in that situation. It's sad that it always comes to, it's the Latina board member, it's her kids.
Good evening. I want to second what, my name is Patty Cassetta. I'm the kindergarten bilingual teacher at Thousand Oaks. And I want to second what Gabriela said. Thank you, Beatriz, for being our voice and for always supporting us in this uphill road that we have encountered. I do have a follow-up on the question that Director Appel directed to Francisco Martinez. She asked him what happened, why if there are kids in the wait list, why is the program not why are there more kids in the class? There are only 8 kids right now, but there are kids in the wait list. We heard from this mom tonight that she applied in January, and in January, admissions told her that there were only 10 kids who were going to be put in the program. Early January, that's a lot of time to allow this family to come in and to test and assess and put her in the program. And we have a lot of families. I know that I heard from Mr. Scudero that they have gone through the list, but we talked when we met with Dr. Evans about transparency. We asked you that you communicated with us. Again, we just received the letter that said that you had decided to go ahead and close the program, and that was not what we thought the transparency was going to be. One more thing is, I know that nobody's going to believe, I mean, we've been fighting, some of you had said for the last couple of years, we've been fighting for this program for a long time. And even though nobody in this court or at this board believes us that admissions is the problem, it is the problem. Admissions has made us come to where we are right now. And I want you to think about that. Thank you.
My name is Andra. I've taught in the TL bilingual program for the entirety of my career for 16 years. And I have never felt more disheartened, belittled, appalled, and embarrassed to work for a district that I love, that would put money over kids. And a district that claims to be centered around equity. I think, Mr. Daniels, you mentioned, and many others today, that you've done everything you could to make TO's bilingual program visible. This is simply untrue. I personally have sat year after year in kindergarten fairs next to Francisco, and he never would say that our program was open to the whole district. We know there's not transportation until I said it, and I would clarify it for the families, meeting after meeting. Resources, I know, Ms. Appel, you mentioned that the dual immersion program costs extra resources. When our program was, when the board agreed to continue our program and not force us to consolidate, we have never received the same resources as the dual immersion school, ever. And we've fought for little things here and there so that it's simply not equitable. I have so many things to say. The Heritage Program, who came up with that, where, why? It definitely wasn't the teachers from Thousand Oaks. And although I sing and dance all the time with my kids, 3 hours a week is not teaching language. Kids will never learn language in 3 hours a week. As a teacher of color, this is not the way to retain teachers of color in this district. I love my students. I love this district on so many. Berkeley, one of the first districts to voluntarily integrate. We should go against what our national government is doing now, and the decision that was made tonight goes with that. And I just want to say, Beatriz, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andra, and thank you to the teachers that stayed here after school's out and until 11, after this year's session. My name's Emma Fuentes. I sent a letter to you all today. I know many people did from Thousand Oaks. So for you all, it seems, as people have shared tonight, sitting here, that this is all a formality and part of your job. And on the other end of these decisions are families and teachers and people that have committed livelihoods to this particular program. It's deeply troubling to hear year after year that there's no real consideration or understanding of the distinction between the TWI program and the bilingual model at Thousand Oaks. And we're not a huge district. There's only 2 language programs in our district that deal with Spanish language. It seems absurd that there's still questions around what the 2 models are and how are they different. Also, why was there never talk then about maybe the bilingual model is a model that's necessary and needed for a certain community, and maybe that should be moved to LeConte too? Why is it dismantled? Why was there no vision or creativity around how to think through this dilemma and this problem that we're in? It's unsettling this is the way you all go. Thank you, Beatriz, for asking to give this program, which is the longest program in the city, a chance. It's deeply disturbing.
Hi. Again, thank you for all your hard work. This is my 2nd time at your board meeting, and I appreciate there's a lot of hard work working until 11 o'clock for decisions. I understand that. I'm just here to think about, I didn't see or witness any type of data that was used to make this decision. There's been questions about the enrollment and administration's process, about people not giving access to applications or being dissuaded from applying. And I mentioned, like, do we know that information? How many people applied? Where are the numbers? Who called? Where's information about the number of enrollment? How was the system processed? I see a lot of qualitative information, but no hard information about where the numbers are. And my family specifically applied for the program. My son has been in a Spanish-speaking daycare since he was 6 months old, so he speaks Spanish. We elected for this program and then weren't given a call. My wife called, and then she was told, oh, we see you check Thousand Oaks, but your last name isn't a Latino name, so we didn't think you really wanted the program. We got in, he tested fine, he got into the program, and he's thriving. He loves the program, it's great. I want my daughter, who's also in the Spanish-speaking daycare, to have that same opportunity. We all speak Spanish in the house. I have a minor degree in Spanish, my wife speaks Spanish. It's part of our life, what we do every day. This is important for us. I don't understand if the real reason, as Director Appel talked about, was about resources. If we know there's a problem with admissions and there are families who are saying, I want the program, but being dissuaded to go into the program, that's an issue. And I appreciate the off-ramp that was presented. I'm not sure where that's going or what can happen with that, but I appreciate there's an effort. But there's some real problems with what the focus is of the program. And the Heritage Program, again, is like, let's sing and dance in Spanish. It's kind of insulting and what that really means. So just really think about what we can do in the future. And I would like to take you up on your offer for coffee, so I'll give you a call to talk about that a little bit further. But I appreciate all of your work, so just thank you.
My name is Jeff Mertens. I was in the original class of West Campus, which is where we are right now, and helped to integrate the Berkeley schools. I went to school with Phil Chenier, who's a famous basketball player. I went to school with many, many people who learned how to be bilingual by taking Spanish beginning in the 8th and 9th grade here in the Berkeley schools. Es muy importante que nosotros entendemos la importancia de la cultura y la lengua español en esta región.
It's very important that we understand the language and the culture of this region.
Yo trabajo 5 días como voluntario.
I volunteer 5 days out of the week.
En los 3 centros,
at the
Hopkins,
3 centers, Hopkins, Franklin,
and King. Yo veo todos los días
every day I witness
niños de habla español
children that speak Spanish
cooperando con niños que no hablan español,
collaborating and working with kids that do not speak Spanish
con alegría,
with happiness and cheerfulness,
tratando de resolver problemas que
in an attempt to resolve issues
que todos de nosotros tenemos.
To problem solve.
Favor de guardar este programa y salvarlo.
Please keep this program.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.
Extended board comments?
Go ahead, Director Hempel, if you want.
I just want to say that I understand the anguish of the Thousand Oaks bilingual program community, but it's not true that only Director Levia Cutler cares about the Latino community, about the Latino students that we have. or students who wish to become bilingual who do not come from native Spanish speaking families. The reason I think most of us have mentioned Beatrice is because we know that this is especially difficult for her, given her long history of activism and being one of those, along with Salvador, Murillo, and others, who were responsible for this program being there to begin with. So that, I know, is what governed my comments and what I believe probably governs our other comments. Unfortunately, the truth is, with the changing demographics of Berkeley, we simply cannot sustain an entire school that is an immersion program, as well as another school that has a strand, that both, in order to be successful, to be what will help English language learners be able to be proficient in English while also retaining their native language. We simply cannot sustain two different programs that are like that. I really do look forward to the possibility of seeing whether or not we can expand the teaching of Spanish in our elementary schools. For those that do have some Spanish at home, that will help retain that Spanish. And for those that do not have it, it gives a great opportunity to be on the road to bilingualism. And as part of that, if we could do so at the elementary school, we could also potentially change the offerings at the middle school. So it's not just for those that are who right now you could start Spanish 1 knowing no Spanish, but perhaps there are higher level Spanish classes at the middle school that would help native those from the Latinx culture to grow their command and provide accelerated Spanish for those that wish to be bilingual who do not have those backgrounds. So I just want to say that it is not true that Beatrice is the only one on this board. I certainly know that I care deeply, and there has been a coalition of the Black community and the brown community in Berkeley that starts from those days of the Salvador Murillos, the Madells, Sherricks, and that is something that, as the demographics of Berkeley change, we will have to figure out how we work together to be able to retain what we can, so we are not lost in the Berkeley vet of tomorrow.
Can I just make mention, I know that we need to leave, but I just want to, because I mean, obviously feel really sad and badly. It's obviously it's a big day and a big loss. And I did hear in a lot of your comments this, and I'm curious, I wish we'd heard more of this before, about the idea of a heritage program does not resonate with you and your community. So I do think whatever that committee is, we should expand that so that whatever we're coming up with does resonate, because I also heard what you said. I don't know enough about what a heritage program is to know exactly what that would what that would be, but I think, I know I would be happy to meet with you, and however we come together with some experts who can make that something that's real and genuine and not window dressing to replace something that's clearly very important.
The way to have done that effectively would have been to keep the program and work towards.
Okay. You can keep having the conversation after, but I'm just going to adjourn the meeting.
It is important to comment that wasn't addressed at the school site. That's not a need at the school site. That's an imposing of a program. So, which is different.
Good night.
Good night, Karen. Thank you for staying with us.